Welcome to All Elite Reviewing, the only online podcast and video forum that reviews everything in the All Elite universe, from Dynamite and Rampage to Dark and Elevation to everything on the other side of the Forbidden Door and anything you might find in the dark wilds of social media, tying it up into one large bow. Because if there's anything AEW is about, it's about complicated comic book like long-term storytelling across multiple different areas. And you got to keep track of this. In fact, we may start having to have charts and or homework. I'm Joshua Starnes.
And I'm Shamit Ghosh.
And it's been a couple of weeks since the last time we were able to catch up on one of these podcasts. So thank goodness nothing big has happened in the world of All Elite Wrestling. And we can just skip past the last couple of weeks and go right into this week. Actually, there have been a couple of big things that happened that we teased before in our last episode. So obviously we have to talk about the big one that everyone has been discussing, and that's been a part of every talk about AEW for months and months. The Houston episode of Dynamite that Shamik and I went to and got to see our first Dynamite show in person. And it was a blast. They say these things are a party atmosphere, and they are not kidding. It was loud. It was deafening. It was a really, really hot crowd that did indeed sing Chris Jericho to sing his entire entrance and sing him to the ring for the final labor of Jericho that we got to see live from Houston, along with what turned out to a lot of other matches from what turned out to be a really good show and a zippy, even though it was 2 hours long, a zippy episode of Elevation. It turned into two episodes of Elevation because they did a surprise Thursday episode of Elevation from part of the Dark Elevation tapings. Most of it is sort of what you have been expecting from Elevation. Lots of matches, more matches with dark talent than usual. Usually you get some big matches between main roster talent. There weren't as much of those except for what you might call the main events, the two big ones being Death Triangle versus Dark Order, which was super fun, just all over the place, lots of big spots. Colt Cabana got a lot of big spots, including a flying tiaras into a pile driver on Rey Fenix, which for somebody as big as Colt Cabana, it is hard to believe somebody could actually pull that off until you see him pull it off. It was quite amazing. And with lots and lots of storytelling in it as they pushed forward both the Death Triangle Pac Andrade storyline, when Andrade came out and sat amongst the crowd, amongst all of us plebeians, to watch the entire match and attempt to get Pac off of his game heading into All Out, which he didn't do. I got to sit right at the post and watch him set up and pull off the Black Arrow, and that is even more impressive in person than it appears on TV when you see how high up he gets and how far down he comes. And in the finish was Evil Uno accidentally tagged Alan Five Angels, leading to the pin. And tensions have been running high in Dark Order ever since Hangman Page left and asked them to leave him alone. And this was the first time, in fact, the first time that anyone from the Help Hangman faction has mixed with anyone from the Let Hangman Be faction and gone into a match, and it went spectacularly awry, and it was left with much finger pointing. The rest of Dark Order came out. They were yelling, they were screaming, and it was the beginning of what is either going to be the breakup of Dark Order or is going to be a lot of tension and storytelling until someone rides to the heroic rescue and puts them back together and or becomes the new head of Dark Order. And there's no telling which way they're going, but there was a lot of that happening. And then we also had best friends, or new best friends, as Shamik calls them, with Wheeler Yuta still taking over for Trent, taking on TH2 and The Blade in a real banger of a main event that I particularly loved. It wasn't as much fun as the previous Best Friends versus Hardy Family Office match from Dark a couple of days earlier, because they've been having a lot of these, and I can feel you if you're getting a little confused which one we're talking about, because much like New Japan, they like to do the multiple different tags leading into the big main blow off that they're pushing for a main event show and that it doesn't feel like we've still gotten to yet, even with a recent Orange Cassidy versus Matt Hardy match. But that definitely seems like what they're headed towards. But they had a great one. That Dark was the only thing I really remembered from Dark. They had Private Party and Matt Hardy versus Best Friends, which ended with Private Party took the loss, but then Matt Hardy tried to get in and punch out Orange Cassidy at the end of the match. He ate an orange punch and he sold it like you've never seen anyone sell the orange punch before. Private Party had to lift him up and carry him out of the ring, his head lolling, and he's flipping and flopping around, and they end up having to give him like air-to-air resuscitation on the ramp to bring him back to consciousness. It was great. That felt like pure carny pro wrestling to me, which is my favorite sort of pro wrestling. I loved that. We didn't get quite anything quite as good from Elevation in Houston, but it was a real treat of a match with Blade eating the orange punch and taking the pin, and the beach break and taking the pin, and it was all kinds of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to see Sting no sell a double powerbomb through a table. That was amazing. I was like,
great.
what the fuck is
Well, let's
this?
not even jump to
like,
that. I mean,
even from like a creative standpoint, I was like, okay, so you're just like making him a Superman now, kind of like
I'm
thing?
fine
like
with that.
Hogan bullshit. But then I
it.
thought like an actual realistic standpoint, I was like, that actually should kind of hurt, and you should should take you some time to get up. And so that other, that aspect of it, you're like, wow, damn, dude, like you just got up. And I guess that's just what they did with the character, and it was against 2.0, which I guess that's what their I guess that's what their role is in AEW now, is just to get
I'm
beat
fine
up.
with that too.
I guess I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
We didn't see too much of them this last week. But yeah, I mean, other than that, in the Houston show, I think the only people we didn't get to see really were Malachi and Miro, right. The two biggest ones.
Well, Miro did a pre-tape. He did a video package, but we never saw him come out. I know. Yeah. But that match with 2.0, yeah, once we got into Dynamite, I mean, it was a hot crowd, it was a loud crowd, and they had a bunch of great matches from beginning to end, starting with those. And 2.0, well, apparently Matt Lee, who's one of the 2.0 members, his wife just had a baby, so he's been given like a couple of weeks off.
Is everybody having a fucking baby right now?
Apparently so. So that's why they got replaced in the follow-up Dynamite, because that was supposed to be 2.0 that, and not that. Or the following Rampage, that instead of Pretty Picture and the Wingman, which is fine. I always enjoy a bit of the Wingman, but that was supposed to be 2.0.
Yeah, Moxley just had a baby. I mean, it's like all of them like waited to see if AEW was successful. It's like, all right, we'll get it on. Now they're all having kids, and then now Cody and Brandon have like a huge TV show about their kid now or whatever. Yep. So, which looks horribly contrived. Have you seen the previews for it?
I skipped past it. Well, it looks like every reality show ever made. Reality show.
So horribly contrived.
Some people love those things. Their ratings driver is fine. Anything that helps out AEW, that keeps anything that ties AEW to TNT more, so that's really hard to pry them off, and they get support from the network. It's fine. Apparently, they're hiring like a head of creative for this sort of thing, and they have like 3 shows that they're working on. It will be. I don't think they're going to be new wrestling shows, but it might be stuff that's sort of wrestling adjacent. I don't think it'll be more roads to the top, but it will be something like that. So it sounds like, TNT's going all in on them, which is good, and you would expect them to with the level of ratings that AEW's been delivering. I mean, they were the number 1 on their night for 4 weeks in a row. And then they delivered 1 million plus at 10 p.m. Eastern on a Friday for the other big show, the big Rampage we'll talk about in a minute. So TNT has a lot of reasons to do that.
Show. I want to see Malachi Black just show up, like kick the babies off. They do something like that. It's like, like when they did the punching baby thing with like Sinski, like back in the day.
Back in the day. I don't think they're gonna get away with it now. That baby would have to catch his foot and throw him like Superman or something like that. To get that one over. But there was, beyond that, we started out hot with, for some reason, John Moxley and Eddie Kingston were coming down to the crowd to make an impromptu. So at least we quote unquote saw them. Although from my vantage point, all I could see was the crowd looking at them.
Brian Cage, that's supposed to happen. All he got was a tape segment about a backstage fight.
Well, at least when Ricky Starks came out. It's for the pay-per-view. No, it's for the pay-per-view. So they, it's like anything else. They're doing little bits and pieces to make us remember that this is coming. So we're tuning in for it when the pay-per-view comes. So it's
I
a
just thought it was
pay-per-view
weird
match.
to advertise it. Like, why not just have him go through Hobbs and then go through Starks instead of advertising that match and then have it not happen? That's the part that I'm kind of,
which is what they're doing. But
otherwise, crazy. I'm like, what was the point of that?
Well, I think it is what they're doing. It's just, I mean, they're just the way they're going about it. Because this week we are going to get Brian Cage versus Will Hobbs, so he's going to have to go through him first before he gets to Starks. And this thing, I think, was setting that up. It was setting up, okay, he's been attacked by Hobbs, so now he's going to. Well, because I think they wanted to come up. If I had to guess, if I think they like to have reasons for things to happen rather than just having the matches most of the time. And so since his thing has been with Ricky Starks and what he's been asking for is a match with Ricky Starks, and it doesn't make sense for him to go in and have a match with Hobbs first. They wanted to give him a reason to have a match with Hobbs first. So this is his Hobbs attack.
Wrestling. I would say, hey, you don't fight me until you fight him, and then Cage says, okay.
Well, I think they wanted more than that. I guess, or they saw, or maybe because they
you don't need to
doing
drag my ass up to the fucking arena and then make me think I'm going to see that match, and then I don't see that match.
And probably because they're also already doing that with Jericho and Pinnacle, so they were like, well, we don't want to do the same exact thing, even though we're doing something similar at the same time. So we're going to give him a different reason, which is we're going to have Hobbs attack him. So now he's got a reason to want to go and have a match with Hobbs before he goes to find Ricky, but it's all based around.
Which is going to be a good match.
See, I guess to me, I was sitting there, I never expected Cage and Starks to have that match in Houston. Besides the fact that there was a lot of other stuff equally big on the card. I didn't think they were going to have that many big matches on that card, but I was like looking at they've been going on it for so long. I've been looking at that from the beginning as that is a pay-per-view match that they're going to have. That's Cage's and Starks pay-per-view match. I have never expected that to be anywhere except at the pay-per-view, and everything that's about before up until then is them just reminding us that's going to be on the pay-per-view.
That's great. No tag match. So. Yeah.
But the fact that they brought out Moxley and Kingston and they never made it to the ring, so I never even got to see them. I was made up for the fact that the 2.0 versus and Daniel Garcia versus Sting and Darby Allin match totally made up for, even though half of it was up in the rafters as they went up into a refreshment area and beat each other up there before coming back down, and you could only see parts of that unless you were looking up at the screen. But then when they got in the ring and they put Darby onto a suplex onto his skateboard, and then Sting went through powerbomb through a table, jumped back up, completely no-sold it, and put them both into a dual Scorpion Deathlock, followed by a dual Scorpion or a dual Scorpion DDT, followed by a dual Scorpion Deathlock. It was great. I loved it, and I wasn't like a WCW Sting guy, but that was great. That's why you should see a legend.
I mean, it was good. I mean, and the other thing we got robbed of that, and I guess we also got robbed of, well, not really robbed because it's not like CM Punk was ever going to really show up in Houston, right? But
or they didn't tease
it because that was saved for the next night and the first dance. So
I know we were expecting, maybe two.
Pretty much the most exciting moment on wrestling that I can remember in a long fucking time for real. I mean,
for everyone.
I'm not going to miss this. I sat there, and even though I knew it was going to happen, I knew they were going to start the show with it because you're not going to have the fans chanting CM Punk the whole goddamn show until you get to the end. No. You're going to get at the beginning. So they did that, and even then, I was still like, I mean, I wasn't crying like that one dude, but I kind of get it. If I was from Chicago and I've been waiting 7 years for the guy to come back, I'd probably get a little emotional if I was up there too, but I know I was smiling real big. And
that's one of those things where, and I went back, and I'm not usually, and I missed the entire Punk era. So like I know who he is, but he's not like
really?
I hold up. Yeah, I didn't. I stopped watching wrestling in 2001. It didn't start again until like 2018. On a regular basis. Like I would know stuff that's happening, but I wasn't like. Nothing was like so amazing that I was tuning in weekly to see what was happening here and what was happening there and stuff like that. So I knew who he was, and I knew about like the walking away from everything.
He's a little over that,
but he's a little over. But but it wasn't like I was like a giant mark for it. But even then, I could tell like this is something different. This is something that people within wrestling will always talk about forever. Will go down in history as one of those great wrestling moments. It's like Bruno Sammartino losing the WWF title, or Undertaker finally losing it, breaking the streak at like WrestleMania. This will be one of those things that
the thing that made you stop watching WWE.
This will be one of the things that people.
It's more like a
just
WO
people
go
when
Hogan appeared on WCW or something like that.
Or Hogan appearing, turning on WCW and joining the NWO or creating the NWO. Yeah, it'll be one of those things that's like a landmark event that just marks.
And in his promo, he put over Britt Baker. He put over Darby Allin.
Yes, he did.
He put over people even in his first promo back.
Yeah, so he didn't make it about him. He made it about the company and pushing the company and saying, "I'm going to be here full time, and I'm going to be doing stuff."
And I immediately like, okay, CM Punk versus this person, CM Punk versus Kenny versus Christian, like all these. These are, there's so much good shit he can do in AEW. And that's what I'm very excited to see right now. It's not like we haven't liked the show before, right? We were like, episode 11 or 12 into this thing. So you've liked the show before, but now it's like, I'm that much more like, I might not even wait for tape, delays this time. I actually watch this shit live because, CM Punk, I even have the Best in the World DVD. I have the shirt. I even tried to get the shirt the same night. No, guys. It crashed.
This is
sold in 24 hours.
It's been a hot promotion all summer, but this is really just pouring gasoline on the fire and making it more hot. Which Punk did some more the week later, but we'll get to that. But what I was gonna say was like I skipped to that era, so I wasn't like a giant Punk mark, but even I rewatched this segment, like the YouTube clip of this segment, probably like 10 times, just because you can tell just watching it what a
great
big
promo,
amazing thing it is. Just
the way he
walk out,
crowd is just
being willing to like jump into the crowd, and man, you can see that one security guard was like freaking out when he dove into the crowd. Like, oh god, not on my watch.
It looked like there's somebody new, like is a regular.
I don't know. I couldn't tell. But then bouncing around everything, and it was great. There was a lot of that feeling on the air on the Dynamite that we went to a couple of days before, and there were Punk chants throughout that Dynamite. Not all the time, because people like the show and the show was giving them great matches. We talked about that starting match with Sting and Darby Allin 2.0, but then that was followed up by probably the best match like I've ever seen Sean Spears have, singles match. In his blow off match with Sammy Guevara, which was fantastic. I was pulling some of my pictures off, and I have a great video of him doing that 460 off of the post on Sean Spears. And
that was I had to come up with, I was like, what kind of what degree turn is it? Because he like did the flip, but it landed on his back on him. So it was a little unconventional. I was like, it's like a 540.
It's almost but like a senton, because he's coming out on his shoulders.
Like
and they went crazy, and then they did like the knees, and Sean Spears got busted open and was bleeding everywhere. They did a DVD off of the second rope. And people were kicking out of everything. That was, and I heard some people complaining about kicking out of the 460, but I'm like, look, a near fall isn't a near fall if it's not something that can legitimately put somebody away. If you, just a kicking out of a DDT, well, of course he is, because nobody ever wins with that match. You've got to, you don't want to do this all the time, but for a big blow off match, you want to be kicking out of people's finishers, because that's what makes you think that this is going to be the end, and makes you get surprised when I thought that 460 was the end, and then they got me. I thought that for a second, I thought that and even though there was like a big part of me was like, there is no way on earth that Sammy Guevara is going to lose in his hometown after proposing to his girlfriend, which also we saw the live proposal on Elevation to his girlfriend, who looked legitimately surprised and actually went and said, "Are you kidding me?" when he broke out the ring. But because wrestling has everything in it. But I thought, like, there's no way he's going to lose. I knew there was no way he's going to. This is not WWE. They don't beat people in their hometown to generate heat. But even then, when like they did a finisher off the second rope, I was like, there's no way they can have him kick out of this. And then he did. So they got me. They got me twice. And that's what that is supposed to be. Anyway, that's my argument back against that. Right. And then his actual final finisher, GTS, did the job on a bleeding everywhere Sean Spears. And we got to have Tully out, Tully Blanchard out doing a lot of classic Carney heel manager stuff and having to get thrown out. I mean, you can't get more classically pro wrestling than that. I loved it.
Other than Don Callis, really.
Other than Don Callis, and we'll get to that because there's a lot of
Don Callis. Is Sammy gonna have to change his finisher now?
No. He has, I mean, his primary finisher
Is
is
he
the,
age
because
right?
he's, there's a lot of people who are joking that they should have a competition to see who it is, but I don't
It's
know.
kind
He's making that 460 work pretty solid. I could see him switching to the 460, although because it's harder to set up, but I mean, Pac pulls off the blackout arrow all the time, so it's
right.
possible.
Yeah, not that there's not. Well, I guess the coffin drop, and there's
Yeah.
like not. I guess there's only a handful of like top rope finishers in AEW right now. So
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Other than the coffin drop, I don't know if anybody has one that they
right,
use on a regular basis. I mean, there's like a
mm-hmm.
lot of top rope
Top drop,
movers.
the black arrow, and then
The
this one.
black arrow, yeah.
Yeah,
Everything after that, there's like some things that'll bounce. Like Indie Taker, it doesn't come off the top rope. You just got to go over it in order to do it. And
right. And I guess a couple of people have a 450, but that's why it's not a finish.
yeah, but it's not a finisher. It's not quite the same thing. And we also had Jurassic Express versus the Young Bucks. I mean, if you have never seen a Young Bucks tag title championship match live, you have not experienced pro wrestling at its best. I mean, that was, and they have definitely had better tag matches, but when like the Young Bucks go in, and yes, it was full of shenanigans, but sort of the way it had to be. But when the Young Bucks go full force into a tag title match, they bring out all the guns, and this was a crazy banger. This got me even before and this was the setup for the tag team elimination tournament that they had right afterwards, leading to a cage match at All Out. But because this one was full of almost every member of the Elite came out at some point. Kenny Omega came out to throw a chair in to wallop them. They were having stereo dives. Luchasaurus was beating people up back and forth. One of my favorite bits was Brandon Cutler getting on the ring with a flare and trying to distract Luchasaurus like he was a tyrannosaur from Jurassic Park, and then not working at all. It was great.
I would have been full goofball with this dick. So.
Well, it was like the perfect. It was the perfect spring between full goofball and full like serious wrestling match, because you'd have that, but then you'd have Jungle Boy getting in with Nick Jackson and going to town. And Jungle Boy, I mean, we used to talk when AEW started, like that there was nobody at the level of like Nick Jackson and Ray Phoenix, and when they would get in the ring, it would be just like a magic nobody could match. But like these last couple of weeks, Jungle Boy's been matching both of them, stroke for stroke, and you're looking at somebody who's going to be like that level guy, at least just as far as in ring goes. Christian Cage came out, speared Kenny Omega. They went fighting off to the back. You had just all levels of shenanigans, but in a fantastic match. The superplex off of Luchasaurus's shoulders off of the post to the floor.
Yeah,
was not the finish. I mean, they went nuts for this match.
Yeah, it was definitely a very, very good match when we saw it live. Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course Don Callis came out and they put the boots to Christian and to everyone else just to get some more. And they have gotten the Christian Kenny title match over in a couple of weeks that nobody wanted to see. And ever since that Rampage with the Impact title change, suddenly people are starting to really want to get into it.
I don't know. I know what you're saying, and technically, yes, it is more interesting than like anything else. But again, I mean, I kind of hope I'm wrong because, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want Christian to be champion, but I mean, no one really thinks Christian's going to be Kenny for the AEW title.
It's all right. It's not even that, there's always that 1% bit of
story in it. That's good. But like, I mean, at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm more interested than I was before, but I'm still like, okay, I'm not going to be surprised by Kenny win, that type of thing. Like,
it's
I'm
not like, even that.
Where can it go? Like, there's a bunch of other matches on the card where I'm like legit wondering where it could go, but not this one.
Well, it's not even that, because it was like nobody thought either Orange Cassidy or Pac was going to be winning either, but they were like, but it's going to be a great match with those two very different guys. And I think in this case, there was,
oh my God, he could actually win. But I'm just saying, as it is now.
Yeah. I mean, when everyone thought it was going to be Adam Page, a lot of it was, it's going to be a good match, but also we're pretty sure we're going to see a title change, and that's exciting. And now we're pretty sure we're not. But it was, I think a lot of the apathy up front was, we're pretty sure we're not, but also we're not even sure how great it's going to be. But then after that Impact title match, which was actually really good in only 15 minutes, people started to go, okay, This is interesting. There's a lot of bad blood between Christian and Don Callis, which he has just amped up more and more. I mean,
Right.
they got
They
that
sent the archives for that one. So yeah,
they
I saw
did.
that.
They got that Carney piece of shit line over. I mean, that's
Yeah.
getting chanted at every time he comes out now. But also, they got people going, all right, it's going to be a good match. Even if there's no title change, it's going to be super exciting. It's going to be big match quality. And it's gone from dead to, it's definitely not the most looked for match on the pay-per-view. That's going to be, the tag match and the CM Punk match. But it's one where people are like, all right, I'm not like going to turn it off before it happens. No, it's not. It's not completely forgettable now.
I
like
mean,
it
it's
was.
kind of like, when they had the Ethan Darby match, right? Which I was like, and then they had that good sit down segment with JR, which I'm like, okay, there's some fire. But even then, I was legit wondering they could have gone one way or the other with that one too.
Yeah.
So this one is kind of, but it's comparable in the sense that, like, okay, they put a little sauce on it, and I'm like, okay, I smell your sauce. Let's watch the show.
But a lot of that was, even if it didn't matter, it didn't even matter who. I mean, it did matter who won, but it was like that match sold itself because it was so good and so crazy. And then that was what was good at it. And speaking of Ethan and Darby, we had just been talking about how we hadn't seen the Men of the Year for a while, and they were back in Houston.
I guess
beating up Lance Archer.
With Dan Lambert, right? I guess
his muscle.
I don't know. I hope it's not a continuous thing. Although Lambert can talk, it's a very good heel promo, but they're not bad at talking either. So it's one of those things. Like why aren't they talking? They talked all the fucking time before. Right? All of a sudden now they have to have a guy talk for them.
I think it makes sense, at least for this bit. And Lambert's really good at this. He's been a heel manager and Impact in MLW, this sort, and very much this sort of thing. And we got to pull out. They brought in a couple of legitimate UFC heavyweight champions who it turns out I parked behind in the parking garage and walked behind the entire way into the arena. And I saw them wearing the America's Top Team shirts, and I was sure that they were coming out with Lambert. And I thought about saying something, and I didn't.
But what are you gonna say?
I was like, "Hey, you guys are here with Lambert? Is that part of the thing?" Just like ask them, point out, you guys are with America's Top Team. And, well, if they had once they turned around, I would have immediately recognized Jose Aldo because he's very recognizable and been like, "Hey, can I get a picture or something?" But which I'm sure he gets all the time. But which I thought was interesting. Oh, hey, these are the guys we walked in behind. But I think they're going to do that. They give people who can talk managers, and it's generally fine. They give people who can't talk managers. Some people who can't talk, they don't give managers. It feels a little bit weird.
I mean, Andrade gets Chavo and an interpreter, which I'm like, does Chavo's Spanish suck? Because I don't know why else there's an interpreter.
Well, I don't think that other guy's an interpreter. He's like his manservant or something. He just like carries around his.
Oh, they called him clean. I mean, on screen they called him his translator.
I only ever seen him like brushing his suit and showing him what his appointments are and stuff. But
that makes more sense than his translator. Although, I mean, growing up in Texas, there are a lot of Hispanic people who really can't speak Spanish. So Chavo could be one of those. But I'm pretty sure Chavo can speak.
But Chavo can speak Spanish. I mean, and he's there doing some of that. And I guess I don't know if that's going to be permanent or it's just something they're continuing on as Andrade gets more and more used to promos. But I don't know why they people give him grief about it, because I still think his actual promos are fine. So I get maybe sometimes when they're trying to do the in-ring back and forth stuff, but like when he does like sit down things with JR or whatnot, I think they're fine. So I don't know.
He's good in doses. You can tell when he starts, like when they give him too much to say at one time, then he kind of falters on the back end a little bit. Like if you give him just like 3-minute bursts or something like that, but don't like have him talk for 7 minutes, because then that's when it suffers. You know what I mean? Like he needs to kind of recharge his English a little bit in bursts, and then it's fine. He has good emotion with his promos and everything. Like he comes off as a natural thing. He just clean up the English. That's why Chavo I thought was a great addition to have with him, because someone who can be there. Still don't know what the manservant's doing there other than being a manservant.
I think it's just making him look like a star. He's got a guy who follows him around and does his menial stuff.
I mean, Penta has Alex, right? So there you go.
Right, exactly. There's a rumor floating around that there was a really, really great Latina manager in MLW, Selena De La Renta, who is a fantastic talker. In fact, she was the manager for the Lucha Brothers while they were there.
Okay.
And she left. Her contract ended last year, and she left. And there was a lot of, and she was going to do a tryout with WWE, and there was a lot of talk that WWE was going to take her on for NXT, but apparently she didn't. I don't know if that's part of the new changes that WWE is doing, where they're basically not taking any of these people in NXT that they had been
They
taking.
went full 90s again, right? They're just like,
Apparently.
yeah, screw wrestling. We're just looking for models and people who look pretty, and we'll just do some stupid storyline. No one needs to have a good work rate or anything like that.
We're going to teach them how to work WWE main roster way, super slow.
Like everything that CM Punk left that company for, basically they've like leaned into right now.
Yeah. Sounds like it. I mean, everybody's basically like, it's the death of NXT as it was, and it's turning into something, it won't be permanent because this version of it won't work either, and they'll turn it into something else. But yes.
Yeah. We want people that can move the needle. That's what I always keep hearing. Is like, that's great. Move the needle.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen by taking Karrion Kross and dressing him up like.
Which, if they get the steroid problems, that would lead to a lot of move the needle puns. No, those are things. The wellness issues are things of the past, right?
Yeah, so maybe. I don't know. People have been suspended occasionally from missing tests. They can't teach an old dog new tricks, but
can't get steroids.
That's true. So there have been some rumors started up again that maybe she could come to AEW, because she would be actually probably an even better match with Andrade than Chavo is, because she's got the manager fire. She's young.
That's better than Vicky.
She's a great talker. But who knows? And she's done this sort of thing before, but who knows? But I'm still very much looking forward to
that. Would add some sauce to their feud. Even if Andrade
really would
anger up and like, oh,
yeah,
because I don't think
exactly.
I don't know which way that all out match is going to go, but I can't believe it's going to be anything.
I feel like they have to. It's going to be complicated.
We'll get to that
in a second, because I feel like you have to put Andrade over. They're still trying to make a star out of him, and Pac doesn't get hurt. I mean, Pac does not get hurt at all by losing on pay-per-view. He's too over. He's too good. He's too over, and too many people.
If anything, like a dirty win, even I think would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some type of shenanigans.
And it's a tough one, because in a way it's heel versus heel. I mean, they kind of have Pac in the babyface role, but it's not a role that like naturally suits him.
Right.
So it's interesting, but yeah, that was. And then the main event was obviously the final match of the final labor of Jericho versus MJF. On the one hand, it's really hard for that to live up to what came before it, especially the Young Bucks match, but it was really good. And as good as the visual of him being sung to the ring was on TV, live, it was something else. I mean, it was it started out as kind of a jumble, as everyone tried to get to be singing the same words at the same time, but everybody figured it out. And they cut around it a lot on TV to show wide shots and crowd shots. But if you were there live and you could see Chris Jericho really close up, you have never seen someone so happy. He was just smiling ear to ear.
The only thing. It's like when they said Manufactured was going to be no song, we knew that's what we're going to do. I'm like,
well, no. It's manufactured if you like pass out the lyric sheets to everyone before him, and you give them cues, and you tell them, all right, at this point in time, Jericho is going to come out, and you're going to take out your sheets. And
okay, so I'm not saying it was staged.
No, well, it's the same thing. You say manufactured, that's what you're saying. Like, because spontaneous, yes or no. It's not like they just decided to do that.
We all knew we were going to stay in a week.
Well, nobody knows. It's like CM Punk. Everyone's pretty sure it's what's going to happen, but at the end of the day, people are like, you could just have them decide not to. I mean, crowds could, or you could have like one group try to do it, but not everybody joins in, and it kind of peters out. These are all things that might have happened. They just decided, okay, they'll do it or they won't do it. I mean, had already built in.
Everything. It's already built. It's like emotional. I think I wasn't as emotionally into it as a lot of other people.
Well, people were really, really into it, and it was loud. People were really.
Also, I was happy that MJF won. So yeah. I was like one of the only people. I was like, is no one high fiving me?
No, nobody's gonna high five you for that. You soulless human being.
And of course, I was gonna put MJF over. So
I figured that I was assuming that this match was gonna be a pay-per-view match. So when they said they were gonna do it so early, I was like, well, they have to put him over now, because they're going to do this again at the pay-per-view, because this is Jericho's pay-per-view match.
I guess the wrestling, if he loses, he retires, which
right.
I mean, I could see him, especially the good touch that he made is when he said that I'm thinking about doing broadcasting after this, which I'm like, okay, then you're making it a little realistic. Like, I still don't think he's losing. But, they did it a little more realistic. Like, okay, you could kind of like entertain the possibility They're like, okay, yeah, you can see him just losing and going right into the booth. That's
Mhm.
something that could happen because he's been in the booth so much this time. So
And my poor, just, for people who do have a soul, unlike Shmeek, my poor little 7-year-old daughter with her sign was heartbroken when
oh,
Jericho lost because she was rooting for him the whole time. And she is now super excited to see the pay-per-view to see him get his win back because she's very afraid that he's going to lose again
that's
and have to retire permanently.
yeah, proved what he needed to prove. We all know Jericho's going to win at the pay per view. So
And
and he's going to go to bed happy that day.
I think so. So the other interesting thing, especially seeing it live, and it breaks kayfabe a little bit, but I don't mind because I find these things interesting. Is when you're really close, you can see the things that they are doing and setting up for in the ring. So I was close enough that I could see Aubrey giving MJF the sign to pull out the ring, and I was like, oh, that's cool. She did
Is it like
tap?
No,
No, it was like I'd seen her go over and she was checking on Jericho, and I think she was getting okay, it's time from him. So she go over to him and she just did this tap at her side, and he went right into the same side of his pant and pulled out the ring at the same time. I'm like,
okay, yeah,
there you go, some nice in-ring communication. And it wasn't like baseball taps or anything. It was
right.
But it's interesting to you can't really see that. They're really good about hiding that most of the time on TV. You can't really hide it on live. You just want to try to keep people's eyes somewhere else. And if you're not sitting right at the ringside, it's really hard to see. But that was fun. And but then there were a lot of people talking about that moment as one of the greatest ring moments that they have ever seen. With the Jericho entrance, and that lasted for all of 48 hours until Friday, when you saw something that would go back to 90s peak wrestling fandom with 15,000 people in the United Center and CM Punk coming out, and it's the first time they've ever done a 20-minute talking open with no matches, and it was
right. It reminded me of back in the day when WWE used to do that shit with Triple H.
Back in the day, they still do that. This is why I don't watch it. I don't watch the show, but everyone basically tells me that is how every Raw and SmackDown opens.
Yeah, especially Raw.
Comes out.
It was what I was saying, just open up with a 20-minute promo. Sometimes when it was The Rock, you wanted to see it. Sometimes Triple H, you're tired of it. So then,
it is apparently how they still do it, and it's apparently interminable, and everybody hates it, and it ends up turning into an impromptu match that they didn't have on the card, and everyone hates it, but they keep doing it. And here, it totally worked.
Right. Yeah. It didn't lead to a match or anything like that. Well, it led to a match in the sense that he called out Darby Allin.
That's right.
So that match is going to happen at All Out. So
that's right.
Again, don't think it'd be crazy if Darby Allin went over. I mean,
I can't see that
putting Darby Allin over something, but I can't imagine that.
I can't imagine them do it. There's no way.
I think you have a lot of upset fans if that happens.
Yes.
And that's another thing when you have Darby come out in these shows that CM Punk is also sharing his screen time with. Darby's not getting the usual face reactions he normally gets because I think fans have it in their back of their mind that he's still fighting CM Punk.
Maybe, but he still got the kids there with the face paint and everything. He hasn't. Well, he was around because he was on that same show. Because obviously, they still had wrestling. They still had to squeeze three matches onto this show, even though, and they were three good matches. As some of them were very short. They had, I'm trying to remember what exactly it was that was right after. It was right after. It was a tag team match. I know we
Jurassic.
Last week. No, that was last week. Again, after Punk, it was. I want to say it was something. It was Kenny Omega and Christian Cage. But I don't think they were having a match. It was. It was something else or something. Because I know Don Callis came out. Because I know there was a match and then was followed by. It was followed by Kiera Hogan and Jade Cargill. Having a match. Because they wanted to put Jade up in front of a lot of people, which makes sense. But they had a match only went 30 seconds or something. And but I got a feeling Kiera Hogan's going to. She was on a lot of Elevation, then she was on Rampage, and she was on the NWA Empower show this last day. And I got a feeling that we're going to see a lot of her in AEW.
Yeah, she's a bit more seasoned than a lot of the other girls.
Yeah, I mean she's a 2-time Impact Women's Tag Team champion. She's been around for a long time. She's a very good wrestler. And with Diamante in AEW, I can kind of see them getting together as a team, and and her coming, and being there. I won't be surprised if the day comes when they say Kiera Hogan is signed permanently and is going to be around. I expect to see her in a lot of stuff up until that point comes. She lost here, and there will be some dues paying, but she can work and she can talk, which is something they're still working on with a lot of the younger prospects, and that's something that they always need as they try to fill out their roster. And then we wrapped up with a really great main event with Jon Moxley versus Daniel Garcia, which ended up having some more shenanigans from 2.0. It had a really, really interesting finish. I really liked where Daniel Garcia got Jon Moxley in the Texas Cloverleaf, but he leaned back too far, and Moxley was able to reach back and grab him into a bulldog choke. So a reverse submission into a submission. I really like that win. But then you got to send everybody home happy and you get to get the win back from the shenanigans from Dynamite 2 days earlier, because they remember things and there's long-term storytelling and it's not just endless rematches. So 2.0 came out, Darby Allin and Eddie Kingston, and Sting came out, and they cleaned house, and you ended the show with Sting and Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley and Darby Allin all in the ring. They lined up the bad guys, like everybody took everybody's finisher. Sting was doing double scorpion death drops, and there was a paradigm shift, and they lined him up like cordwood, and Darby did like dual coffin drops onto them, and then and stood tall in the ring. And you could not have sent that crowd home happier than they did, from the CM Punk opening to some of their top guys beating the crowd.
Another thing I didn't realize, that the United Center doesn't traditionally host wrestling.
This is only like the second or third time I think they've ever done it.
Yeah,
they could. It's just for some reason WWE never does it there. They just don't.
That's weird, because that's why you'll see. I think there's another show this week, either Darker Elevation, where they were still in Chicago.
Yep.
And they're making a lot of like Michael Jordan references and stuff like that. So it's like kind of, it's a big arena, and so that's kind of, and they sold it out and everything. That's how packed it was. It was just crazy to me, because to me, I'm pretty sure United Center is the biggest indoor stadium in Chicago, but
I think so.
But it's never been a wrestling venue. That's just so weird.
Well, WWE has run stuff there, but not since the Attitude Era. And, like WCW used to run stuff
you
there.
You think it's probably sell out a building like the United Center?
I don't know. They go to a different. They go to a different arena that does like 10,000 people. So I don't know. It's weird that they wouldn't do that or wouldn't even think about it.
Because like Fertitta Center in Houston, I guess it was very cozy, but it's not Fertitta Center.
But it was full. It was. Yeah. Well, that's been because they did that this week with Milwaukee. Like for now, most of the time, they're obviously AEW is doing some stadium shows here and there. They sold out the United Center. They have just about sold out Arthur Ashe Stadium, which is going to be 20,000 people. That's going to be a crazy show. Yeah. And they have like 10,000 people in the Now Arena for All Out.
And All Out is back in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
United.
No, at the Now Arena, which is where they did it 2 years ago.
Is that where typically like wrestling matches are in Chicago?
Well, it's where all of AEW's Chicago matches have been.
That's where the previous pay-per-views have been and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess the United Center thing was just a CM Punk thing.
It was very much so, I think, because I don't think they wanted to do the same place, and they wanted more people, and it was a CM Punk thing, and it was going to be the first dance and Michael Jordan and all of that.
Michael Jordan was, man. So that's like puts them in that pantheon, really.
And they very much wanted to do that, and they did, and they sold it out without ever saying CM Punk's name, and they did it in 2 weeks, which is really something.
I heard TNT was a big part of that too, or they were like they prefer that these type of things not be surprises.
They did. They did say that
properly, which makes all the sense in the world.
But they were really marketing the heck out of it, and they got a big audience. That was like almost 1.
Yeah, they got leaked or whatever. But that's how you get tickets. You don't want to surprise people, but then not show up to your show. So.
Oh no, they couldn't have.
And also, you want to piss them off by not having CM Punk come out.
No, they would have. They would have rioted. They would have burned the United Center. The next day's newspaper was United Center burned to the ground. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But like a lot of the other places they're going though, they're still doing university stadiums instead. Like when they went to Milwaukee, they were at University of Wisconsin. They weren't at like the big like Milwaukee Arena or anything like that.
Yeah, although Giannis was out for that show.
Giannis was there. Yeah, well, and I definitely want to mention that, especially talking about Michael Jordan. Apparently, Giannis is a big AEW mark, which is as you
I
should
remember
be.
a lot of basketball players. I remember when the Detroit Pistons won their championship back in like what 2004 with Rasheed Wallace and Rip Hamilton when Larry Brown was their coach. Their whole ring ceremony, they came out with heavyweight belts.
Well,
There's a big
well,
in NBA
well,
players.
WWE gives like every championship team heavyweight belts. But yeah, just this last year, I can't remember. I don't remember if it was Toronto or who it was. No, it was Philadelphia. It was the Sixers, I think. And like one of their center is like a big Triple H mark because he was doing a lot. He'd do like the DX chop and everything when.
Oh, Joel Embiid.
Yeah. And actually, Triple H at one point in the playoffs, they had Triple H came out with him at the end, and they did the home entrance, and like together they did the Triple H the game entrance, and got the sledgehammer and hit the bell and everything, and so yeah, they went like full force into it.
Yeah, of course, and because they also had that Liberty Bell thing over at Traditions. I'm pretty sure they used the sledgehammer.
They did definitely do that, and which was cool. It was like a really cool thing that he got to do. So yeah, so it's not only them, and I'm sure Giannis watches like a lot of WWE as well. But yeah, that was a big deal. But it was a great rampage, and the elevations that they did afterwards, the darkened elevations they're doing afterwards, were all these dark matches happening in 15,000 seat arena. So I don't know if the next time you'll ever see an elevation like that with that jam packed to the rafters, but and they were cool. I mean, they had like a lot of Dante Martin has been getting a lot of reps in on these
that guy's
darks and elevations. Like he had a great match with he had a great match with Anthony Bowens. He had a great match with Alan Angel.
Right. He's getting still in Doghouse, so Bowens is going out there, and they had a really good like conflict of like style
they
together.
Did.
Like
but it worked.
Like it was a very good like clash of conflict match type of match.
Well, did you notice that when Bowens is coming out, they're still introducing him as Anthony Bowens of the Acclaim? So yeah, I don't think that's going anywhere. But they're just having workouts.
This is again, it's just kind of like what happened with Sammy. When he made those comments about Sasha Banks, and they kind of they didn't suspend him really, but they just like made him go away for a while. That's pretty much what happened to Max. You'll see him back on TV probably in 3 weeks.
But it was really cool. Thunder Rosa had a great match. We got to see Thunder Rosa and experience the Thunder Rosa pop, which is real. I can tell you right now.
Yeah, she's super real.
She's over.
And I guess your thing is if she wrestles in Texas and she brings up the Texas flag, and then if she brings up somewhere else, it's the Mexican
Puerto Rican flag or the Mexican flag.
She was actually even dressed like the Texas flag, from what I remember.
She did, yeah. She was all red, white, and blue, and she had an
like
okay match. But she had an okay match with Penelope Ford, and I think Penelope Ford just looking back to where she was as a wrestler a year ago, much less 2 years ago when AEW started. She's gone from having like a handful of spots she repeated to having a repertoire, and she's doing top rope.
I've always liked Penelope. I remember when Kip was with her, and she come out as like the random mystery woman. Like she come out and just give someone like a Hurricane Rana, but like a really good looking Hurricane Rana. Yeah. So,
but now she's got like this match. Her match with Thunder Rosa was a little messy. There were some points where they were each trying to do different things at the same time.
If you want a messy women's match, just wait till we talk about the hater of Red Velvet match.
I know we're gonna get to that, but there's a lot to say about Red Velvet this week, but we will definitely get to that. But I know some people were giving that Thunder Rosa match some heat that I'm not entirely sure it deserved because when they got on the same page, it was solid. Her Muda lock is really good, and I think Penelope is going to turn out good. Is going to eventually be a really strong heel for their group, and they're giving her a lot of because Kip Sabian's been injured, which is why he's not been around, and so she's having to do a lot of solo wrestling, and they're giving her a lot more screen time for it.
Also, he needs a gimmick. I mean, just come out and saying you're super bad kind of sucked as a gimmick. So.
And he's a
good wrestler, good potential, but it's just his gimmick stuff.
Yeah, something people can latch on to. But I kind of like that match, and especially when you compare it to the women's match from the following Dynamite, which I guess is now time to talk about. We'll get past all that was about the main stuff that had. Fortunately, there was no Joey Janela, although my understanding is there are some from Milwaukee. So there is apparently a Milwaukee match that we'll get into. This following.
Now, have they stalled on the Joey Janela thing? Are they going to keep going with this?
They're apparently going to keep going.
There's no Joey, no George Joel anymore. I mean, I like that storyline a little better. Although,
I think he's still around. I think it's just he just didn't happen to be at any of the recent tapings. But I expect we'll still see some George Joel, and we'll still see some Joey. It'll come, it'll go. It'll come, it'll go until it goes somewhere. So we'll see.
I guess only to annoy you for the Joey Sunny storyline.
He's my QT Marshall or my Varsity Blondes.
I mean, isn't everybody Marshall? Like everybody hates QT Marshall.
No, I don't hate him. I liked it. You know what? We glanced over it, but the other big thing from Houston was they set up the Paul White match for All Out, Paul White versus QT Marshall. And I thought, it's overdone, but in the perfect pro wrestling way, the look of shock that he got on his face when it was obvious what the match was going to be.
I mean, this is just
I laughed.
No one wants to see Paul White do a 60-minute match. No one wants to see QT Marshall out at all. So this is kind of like a good, like, you want to get Big Show out there and do his thing. And then,
yes, this is what I keep saying. This is exactly what QT is here for, and it works. He's here to get the crap beat up out of him by the legends.
People you want to see
and he's made himself someone that you want to see get beat up, and we let and AEW lets its legends beat up guys you want to see them beat up, and so it's a win-win for everyone.
Where's Lance Archer?
Well, he can't. Well, he was on the show. He got beat up he was in Houston. He got beat up by Men of the Year.
That's
apparently
right.
It's going to be the Men of the Year versus Lance Archer. It's going to be.
But they didn't even, when Lambert came out, they didn't even refer to that whole thing. He just came out and just talked about, I guess, them and AEW, but he didn't mention.
Well, they don't do things. They don't do things that I'm sure. Yeah, but they do that. They don't run everything down every week. Just be like, if they assume you watch the previous week's show, but I'm sure the next Dynamite, Lance will be back, and that is obviously the program that they are developing with Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page as MMA type guys, hard guys that can give you a run for your money, so you can believe them in a match against Lance Archer, who's been portrayed as this unstoppable murder machine up until now. So
who loses more than his fair share of matches, but yeah,
not really. And you look at his roster, I think he's lost 6.
Okay, he's lost title matches. Like
he's lost not all of his big title matches because he beat Jon Moxley. You can count on one hand the number of people who beat Jon Moxley. Fair. So I mean, he's up there. He only loses. He's one of those guys. He's upper mid card, bottom top of the card, whatever you call it. He's only ever going to lose title matches against bigger guys. And that's
because we're going to see him. Like if he gets a program, it's going to be after All Out, probably.
Yeah,
for you.
Probably. You'll probably get some, the beginnings of the program before then, but I don't think it'll blow off until.
Because he already lost that belt he had. He won from John, right? He already lost it.
Well, that's a New Japan thing. That's what New Japan. The New Japan wanted to put that belt on Hiroshi Tanahashi, who is saying he wants to come and wrestle in the U.S. like once a month, and New Japan is making a big push to have a lot more shows in the U.S. and a lot of their top guys who are not going to be going through quarantining in Japan are here. For a fairly permanent amount of time. So you're seeing guys like Tanahashi and Minoru Suzuki and Jay White, like guys who normally don't do extended tours of the US are here doing big stuff. In fact, they're going to be doing a show in Garland at the end of September that I'm thinking really, really hard.
No, that's where the Dallas Spider Fest show was, right?
That's right. They're going to do it in the exact same arena. So I'm thinking really hard about getting tickets for that. Driving up there, and they'll tape like 3 or 4 episodes of New Japan Strong there, and that would be really interesting. I can't decide. I know Moxley's going to be doing some of those because he's on the card from already. Jay White's going to be doing a bunch of those, and I know I keep saying it, if you have never seen Switchblade Jay White and perform either promo stuff or in ring, you've got to check yourself out. Some Switchblade Jay White. You're talking about one of the greatest heels in wrestling today. Okay. Totally different kind of heel than like an MJF, but up there at MJF like level.
Okay, which is a pretty high level to me. So yeah,
very high level. So yeah, I guess that brings us to through the life-changing events of the first dance and into follow-up Dynamite, which was not a great follow-up Dynamite. I mean, I've seen maybe one Dynamite that I'd put on the verge of bad. Even then, I enjoy them, even the ones that have bad segments. This was a weak one. I still liked it, but it had its issues. Some of it was apparently they had a match that they had to cancel because the people had COVID. So I don't know
which one was that.
I don't know. They won't say what match it was. It was going to be, and it never got announced for the card. It was going to be one of those. It happened late enough that like on Friday they knew they were scratching it. It was going to be one of those ones.
I mean, if Gun Club versus
Friday,
like I said, Gun Club versus the Factory made us fan of the Dynamite, and it's not exactly the strongest.
Well, I mean, everything that's on there is for All Out. Like Gun Club versus the Factory is to push the Paul White match for All Out, but they got it, and they can't have Paul White out there wrestling. So,
which I don't know how much more heat you need to add to that match. We get it. We all hate QT, man. Let's go out there and beat him up. We don't need you. We don't need to see reasons you want to beat. We get why you hate him. You hate him like we all hate him. You've been watching TV. That's why you hate him. I get it.
Well, Paul White caused QT the loss to take the loss. And so now, it gets a few more people, a few more eyes on Colton and Austin, which you at some point are going to be on Dynamite.
Colton's at 24-0.
Yeah.
The
They wrestle in dark a lot. And
I know, but that's where because a lot of people are complaining about the whole ranking thing. I'm like, well, that's where the whole strength of schedule comes in.
Yes.
But then also 24-0 for a weak strength of schedule, that's a lot of wins against weak people, man.
Yeah.
Maybe he needs to get a loss against a big guy or something like that. But like the 24-0 against nothing people, which I'm assuming he hasn't beaten anybody good. They've all been jobbers, right?
Yeah, I mean, they beat like the Factory.
It's funny when they do the ranking thing and you see that. It's a jarring statistic to see when you see that Colton Gunn is 24-0. It's going to be next fucking Goldberg or some shit. So, yeah.
Well, they beat. Well, I mean, most of the people Goldberg beat were jobbers for a long time as well. No, I mean it's been electricity. But it's been you couldn't beat electricity though. Wuss. But they've beat some of the other teams around there. Like they beat Chaos Project a few times, and they beat the Factory a couple of times. Guys like that.
I beat the Wingmen,
yeah. They beat the Wingmen,
and which apparently their Wingmen are just turning out to be just whipping boys. So
that's their job. I mean, they're funny. They're a comedy group. You could probably break Caesar Bononi out and have him be like a solid singles guy, but he needs more work. But the Wingmen, as it is now, it's comedy guys, and they're great. They're great at being comedy guys.
What is JD Drake's new? Now he's wearing like he's a hipster. Is that what this whole thing is?
It looked to me like it was like a tuxedo without the tuxedo jacket. Is what he was going.
But go back to the fancy fucking gear with the.
I like the fancy gear.
Iteration, best form of JD Drake we've seen yet.
Like, so we were supposed to get another version of Kingston and Moxley versus 2.0. From their interference at Rampage, and because it's just super fun. Watch those groups have a ton of chemistry together, and it's just super fun watching them whip on each other. But 2.0 ended up taking the night off due to having a baby, so the Wingmen were put into their place. And
right, well, I mean, now
that wasn't quite as fun.
Going on because you have Eddie going on with Miro, which is a very weird feud to me, but we can get into that later.
It makes sense. I like that feud. It makes sense.
No, I like it on paper, but okay, I'll just get into it now. So here's the thing: we knew he's been calling Eddie out forever. Like, I mean, it feels like for at least 2 or 3 weeks, right? But Eddie hasn't done shit about it. The only time Eddie done shit about it was this last Rampage. Even it wasn't Dynamite; it was Rampage for literally just 2 days ago. Yeah. And he even talked. He just went out there and just went fucking and went into it. He's just like we knew this was a food, but I don't feel like they're adding much sauce to this yet.
Well, they don't have a lot of time because they're just jumping into it now because it's going to be an all-out match.
Especially because those guys are potential. At least they could have a good promo battle and everything, and maybe that's what will happen this week. Yeah, or we'll see. But I'm just saying that would be nice to see them talk more, or at least feud more before the actual fight on the pay-per-view.
Well, it's not a program. It's just leading up to a match, which tends to be what happens with the TNT title a lot. And because they've wanted people to be wrestling for the TNT title. I mean, they have been talking because they wanted to have time. It would have been hard put to be having Miro, like having his defenses against Fuego and Lee Johnson and whoever it's been, and at the same time working a program with Eddie, because then you'd be going like, well, why is he having title defenses when he's working a program with Eddie? So they're trying to build those around. But it makes sense to me. His whole thing was, Fuego lost to me, but he got a contract anyway, and that's not right. But and the first person who ever did that was Eddie Kingston. He's the one who made it seem like, if somebody gets over with the fans, he deserves a contract. He initiated this. This is not what a pro wrestler is supposed to be. So I'm going to go back and take it out on Eddie, and I like that. It gives Eddie something to do. Eddie's over. It's going to be a good match.
I just wish they had more TV time against each other before the match.
There's just too much to do.
I wish that Utah got something to let us know what he's about, and I wish these guys who are good at talking got a chance to talk. That's it.
There's just too much to do.
I'm so looking
I'm
forward to
sure after the pay per
there's
view,
no way
you
Eddie's
get
winning.
things like that. No, there's no way Eddie's winning.
it.
I'm sure there will be stuff after the pay per view that they'll do, but there's just no, because you got to build up for Britt Baker and Chris Statlander. You've got to build up for Kenny and Christian Cage, which they are putting a ton of time into that.
Build up for Britt and Statlander at all either.
Well, they haven't. They have been. I mean, they've been talking about. So let's get into it. It's been a mixture of things because obviously, it's they can't have them wrestle because they can't have Britt lose.
But they're
not putting them in the matches.
They got this thing with Red Velvet and Hater going. They like in Well,
they had Jamie Hayter come in and put the boots to Red Velvet at the end of the first Rampage, which brought Chris Statler in to make the save. And then the week after that, Chris Statlander moved up to number 1 in the rankings. So she's the obvious next contender. So they made it official that she's the number 1 contender because the rankings, as much as people complain about them, the rankings actually do matter and legitimately give people their next shots. And so she's there. They haven't had a face-to-face, although they apparently are going to. But, they have been taking it out on, they've been also moving forward this story with Red Velvet, who they want to keep in the mix because they want it to keep, even though she's not going to get the pay-per-view match, they want people to remember her because they want to keep her in that sort of middle to top of card women's stuff and going and doing things. And unfortunately, that led to the Red Velvet versus Jamie Hayter match this week, where, it really showed me a lot for Jamie Hayter because she ended up having to ring general this thing through to conclusion. And she almost single-handedly kept it because it fell apart.
What happened to Red Velvet?
I don't know. I think she missed a spot.
She missed a moonsault.
I think she missed a spot early on, and it threw off everything.
Got her the
and she was just like mistiming everything all the way through, which led up to the worst, the one you really can't miss, where she laid out Jamie Hayter, got set for her patented standing moonsault, and she just went completely over Hayter and took her the entire moonsault on her face. I thought that she had knocked herself out at first.
You know what? My impression was because as I was going to allude to later in the show, but I just had my first wrestling match for Doomsday Wrestling actually just this last week, and when I saw this match on TV, I was kind of like, did they get enough time to work on this match with each other? Because it almost seemed like they didn't get much time to work out the match.
It's possible. It's hard to say. And a lot of other, and I'm going to get to that in a second because obviously Velvet's been involved with a lot of other things happening around the same time. So it's possible. But that moonsault was gnarly. I thought she might have, she landed full force on her face. And, but Hayter, like a pro, like a seasoned pro, she turned around. She didn't lose her cool or anything. She just went home right away. She's like, all right, I'm going to layer at you. I'm going to neck breaker you. I'm going to pin you. And this match is over. And she didn't try to sell something that completely missed her. She just, but you know what? It started out, for all we get into that, and I'm going to talk about Red Velvet some more in a second here. But right before that was a really, really good tag match between Lucha Brothers and Varsity Blondes. And Blondes Lucha Brothers got a big pop coming out. Varsity Blondes got a really big pop coming out. They're getting more and more of a reaction. They're getting more and more over every time everybody sees them. And when we saw them in Houston, there were several people who next to me commented that Pillman was much larger in person than they thought he was from watching him on TV. And he is. See, and it's
like when you keep saying the Varsity Blondes are getting over, I keep thinking that you really mean Brian Pillman Jr.
Maybe, but they're even doing stuff with. I see some people are still on the Griff Garrison train, and he is getting better. They gave him a lot to do in that Lucha Brothers match, and the Lucha Brothers gave both of them everything and made them look really, really good. And it was a really good match. And there were a couple of botches here and there, but for the most part, it was really good. But they've even been doing stuff with Julia Hart. We went right back over.
Oh, sure.
She has a program on Dark. She has been inserted into the Big Swole Bunny program, or the Big Swole Diamante program on Dark, where Diamante came out and caused Julia Hart to lose a match against Bunny. So Big Swole called out Diamante on a tag match with Julia Hart. So now Diamante has called out Nyla Rose as her tag partner, and we're going to see.
Didn't Big Swole look bigger to you? bigger. Like I don't know what's going on.
Well, she's had some time off, so maybe she's been hitting the gym. I don't know, but she did look bigger. But you know what? They gave Julia a good promo and some good promo time, and she got to use it. And her promos are getting better. Her ring work is getting better. She got
Max Caster out of business.
We're gonna have to cut this out of YouTube. People are gonna sue us.
Oh no! Sorry, Tony. My bad.
But have you learned nothing from Twitter the last couple of months? But yeah, I mean, she's getting her own program. She was getting some of that Varsity Blondes entrance for her singles matches. So Pillman is definitely the star, and he is definitely the most over. It is. Yeah. I mean, the whole reason you put these groups together is if one of them gets over, you can kind of spill it over to everyone around them. And it seems to be some of it spilling around. Like people pop when they hear the growl thing for the beginning of the Varsity Blondes entrance. I don't know why you're rolling your eyes. They're great. They are legit. It's a great act.
Lose the Lucha Brothers. By the way, I'm thinking that Lucha Brothers have to take the tag team titles.
They have to. It is time.
Yeah,
it is time.
It's almost a lose. And Lucha Brothers really deserve it right now, I think.
And you know, and it falls through with what they've done with their titles to start with. They've made sure that they don't switch titles very often. And when they put them on, they put them on like top people of the division who can carry a bunch of great matches for a year. Because in most cases,
and I think Lucha Brothers are
for a year. Yeah. And there's a lot of great teams.
I mean, and especially because Ray has shown that he can be injury free for months at a time right now, which I think was the biggest obstacle for them before. Honestly, if Ray wasn't injured, I think they would have already been champs right now. But it's just that. I mean, yeah, maybe, but at least it would have been in the picture more. But you know, you can't be in the picture if you can't work. So
yeah, well, I mean, that led to us getting to have both the Pac Pentagon title match and the Pac Ray Phoenix title match, both of which were great title matches. But you can kind of count on them being able to. So the question will be, how does that intersect with the Andrade story? You know, if they win, then there's no reason for them to join Andrade. But if they lose, then you start to think, oh, maybe Death Triangle is going to break up and get Andrade and Lucha Brothers.
Right, so, because those two matches are very much intertwined story-wise. So
yep, all of this stuff, you know, has layers, and you got to think about it. Like, what? Not just what would be nice if this guy won or that guy won, but how does that affect all the other matches?
Like, creatively, like, you know, you can put on the charts. Like, okay, well, this happens and this happened, and then.
Well, it's like it's that long term, it's that long term booking stuff you've got that makes this stuff make sense. Like we keep talking about who's going to beat Kenny Omega, and we think it's going to be Adam Page. Does that make sense for the story they've been telling? Like on the one hand, yes, it does make sense.
I don't know, but now there's
for the story you're telling.
There's more variables in the formula, right? So
right. Well, that's the other thing is, you know, when you do that change, it's not just about like what fits with the story you're telling, but like whoever takes that title is going to wear it for a year and has to carry 3 or 4 pay-per-views. Right. Can they do that? And what matches can they have that's going to carry a pay-per-view? And some guys, you know, obviously can do that. And some guys, it'd be cool. Like that's why Eddie Kingston is not going to win, because he's not going to carry pay-per-view matches.
And don't get me wrong, Eddie Kingston's in-ring work is, I think, like worlds better than when he first started, but that it's still not there, like to be on that level. It's just,
he's a good character. He you know, when he gets in the ring, it's great. You're gonna have fun because you like him and you like his promos, but it's not the same as you know, being in one of the top of the card guys. And why that, you know, that will always
like I mean, like Moxley even the top of the card guy, like more than Eddie is.
Yes. But I'm still looking forward to it. And so we took now as much grief as we were giving Red Velvet, and that was a terrible match, but some people have terrible matches. Britt Baker had what is still like the 2 of the worst women's matches ever on all of AEW, and her in-ring, but she's also had the best women's match on all of AEW, and her ring work since she got back from her injury has been impeccable. So
I mean, sure, but just
stuff goes up and down.
And bad match is a bad match. That's just it. You're not saying that she's going to keep having bad matches. Right. But this was not a good.
But it wasn't a good match. But you know, this same time this is happening, this past week, Red Velvet's been on. There was an entire contingent of AEW women on the NWA Empower event. Diamante wrestled went over on a triple match against Kylie Ray, who used to be an AEW wrestler way back when the promotion started, and Chikorita from AAA. And but the 2 things that were I thought were that I liked the most, that were most impressive to me, were there was a women's tag team tournament that anchored a lot of it because they did multiple rounds of it up to a final. And one of the tag teams was Red Velvet and Kylan King, who have been in a faction together on Elevation. And we haven't seen them together a lot, but apparently they still are. They just haven't had matches together.
Did Kylan King get to act like a face this time? Or?
She did, because yes, they were the faces most of the time.
Last time we comes on TV, it was kind of like, are you a face or a heel?
No, I mean, she was mostly a face, and they were mostly faces, and she was also mostly like the biggest person in the ring most of the time. So she was getting to be like a giant powerhouse. And and they wrestled several matches because they went all the way through to the finals against Allison Key and Marty Bell, who were obviously going to win because they are signed to the NWA, and Kylan King and Red Velvet.
I don't know. Christian signed to AEW when the Impact.
So, but they had several. They had to follow. Deonna Purrazzo did a match against Marlena for the Impact Women's Championship that blew the doors down. And Kylan King and Red Velvet had to follow that for the tag team championship match, which would have been really tough, and they pulled it off. Like their match against Allison Kay and Marty Bell was really, really good. So like, and a lot of that was Velvet, a lot of that was Kylan King, but they worked really well together as a tag team.
Was that after the Rampage show?
Yes, that was live. That was live last night. So like Velvet and Kylan King wrestled twice last night live. So she's already so she's fine. And it was among some of the best matches that Velvet's ever done. I mean, the women's tag team championship match was really, really, really good. And then that was followed by the match that we'd seen set up on Dynamite of Layla Hirsch versus Camille for the NWA Women's Championship, which anyone doesn't remember, Camille's like 12 feet tall and Layla Hirsch is 4 feet tall.
Right. Yeah.
And they had a powerhouse versus wrestler match that was a really good clash of styles. It was really good. Yeah. And Camille's had some bad matches, and she's had some really good matches, especially. So Layla Hirsch was a stand-in for Serena Deeb, who's out with knee injuries. But Camille's had some really good matches with Serena Deeb. She had like one tremendous match with Thunder Rosa. And actually her match with either her match with Layla Hirsch or the Deonna Purrazzo match were the two best of the night. So, but there was like a large contingent of AEW women there representing and doing very, very well. And Red Velvet was sort of right in the middle of that. So with some very good matches. It made me want to see the Red Velvet Kylan King tag team in AEW because it's really good and they work together really well.
I mean, they should. I mean, they're not doing jack shit with Kylan King, so I mean, why not?
Well, she's still in the AEW version of developmental, realistically, but they're doing more, but she's getting better and better all the time, and should start at some point soon. She should start to have some Dynamite matches, especially when they start to need baby faces to wrestle heels on TV. But if they're going to because one of the other things we saw on I think it was Rampage. Yeah, it was Rampage this week. There was Tay Conte and the Bunny had a singles match that ended when Penelope Ford interfered, causing Tay Conti to lose. And what seems to be Bunny and Penelope Ford coming together in a team. And they are, in fact, apparently best friends in real life. So this makes sense. But if they're going to, if we're going to start to have a heel women's tag team, then, it makes sense to start bringing in, putting together some babyface tag teams as well.
Your real husband, she's your real best friend. You want to act or like to suspend belief at some point.
Well, what the old
so convenient for her.
What you always say, what they always say about wrestling is you want to start it with it being the truth. You want to start. It's not acting. Like that's like the downside of the WWE method, where everybody's a character and they're playing a character, and it's just make believe. Whereas what it always classically has been is you start off with something that's real and you keep it real right up until right up until it's time to make it a work. It's not
right until McMahon marries Triple H.
That's right.
That's how you get that.
So are you suggesting the Triple H Stephanie McMahon marriage is a work? What?
I just think it's crazy that we're talking about crazy storylines that people don't remember that he used to actually have sex with a corpse.
Yes. Well, everyone likes to act like that.
I guess that's what WWE wants to go back to, is when they made stars that moved the needle by fucking corpses. So,
apparently so. I was gonna say they have done worse stuff in their time. They actually haven't, but they have done stuff that is is bad.
Get birth to a hand is also up there. So, but another thing I liked in the show, and this is something that I'm hearing a kind of a running narrative on that people are kind of upset because like if you look at the main events for the last couple of shows on their own, they've been kind of but like for example, the main event for Dynamite was Malachi Black versus Brock Anderson.
Right.
To me, the main event isn't the match. The main event is the concept. Like we're just there to see Malachi Black take out one by one the Nightmare Family, and that's what this was. And I was like, I guess I can understand why people like were like, oh well, it's not like it wasn't a barn burner. You knew it was kind of going to be a squash. How can you put that on for main event?
That's what it was supposed to be. That's what you expected it to be.
I think there's also like a really old school mentality of a lot of wrestling fans out there where like the main event has to be like the best match on the card, which generally these days that's not. It just ends up being match for whatever reason it is.
For Dynamite, sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. It's sometimes it is. A lot of the time, it's an attraction. For it's like you said, it's more about who is in it. And and are you is the fact that they are in a match at all an attraction that makes you want to go see it? And that's what right now, like Malachi Black is an attraction. He's a hot act, so just having him in a match would make you want to go see that.
I mean,
and sometimes it is.
Other than possibly Orange Cassidy versus Hardy, there was no other match you could say that was like more deserving of taking the main event spot.
Yeah, that had more star power. You're going to put like the John Moxley, versus the Wingman up there just because Moxley's involved. But
Gun Club Factory, no. I mean, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do Jay Bunny. You're not going to do, the Hater Red Velvet, Lucha Brothers. Even Lucha Brothers, Varsity Bonds, maybe, but still.
Yeah, but not that one.
If anything, I'll probably make that the main event.
Maybe. I mean, and you wouldn't be wrong to do it. Sometimes it makes sense to do those, especially when you're trying to get good ratings, to do those early on to be watching. But I mean, they go like the Thunder Rosa Britt Baker match was a main event, and it lived up to. It was an attraction because of what it was going to be, and it lived up to it by being amazing. The handful of especially the really really good Kenny Omega title defenses like against Ray Phoenix and the first match with John Moxley. So sometimes they are, and sometimes Miro versus Darby Allin
I guess my main point is that like I like it because it's advancing a storyline that I'm actually really buying. Like I'm ready to watch Malachi Black kick the face off of everybody in the Nightmare Family and get cheered along the way for it.
Like there was nothing else. Yeah, I was like, there's nothing else bigger than that you could put on. And Malachi Black is so over that at some point they are going to have to give up on treating him as a heel. I mean, he clearly wants to be a heel, but at some point someone's going to say, we're going to have to say like we're going to have to make you like a baby face.
The face and we'd be like, yay! Yes,
like they are cheering him, beating up all supposedly beloved.
They'll be like, "Hey, that baby deserved it."
No, they need to just go to him and say, like, "No, you are going to be like a Stone Cold Austin level heel, baby face, where you're not nice and you beat up people, but
I don't like what they're doing with Britt Baker right now a little bit.
I mean, they'll have to because everyone just. But but at the same time, like, has he ever been this popular in his career?
It's just funny as shit that he's kicking the face off of these people and no one's booing him.
Some of that just, I think some.
He's like, I thought people liked me.
So who are you? Some of that I think just comes down to.
They're gonna boo the fuck out of Cody.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I think he's ready for it. Some of that I think comes down to like the weird pathology of wrestling fans, because sometimes they'll cheer for women to get beat up by men in some of the intergender matches, and you're like, you guys have got this all wrong.
That's the thing that's so fascinating. It's like,
and this is a lot like that.
Malachi Black just comes out and just like does this. I'm like, oh, I guess either the Nightmare Family's not as over as I thought they were, or Malachi Black just that ridiculously over.
Well, they haven't put any of like. It's a bit of both. They haven't put any of like the big Nightmare. I mean, I think it would be totally different if it was like Dustin. That would be like a totally different dynamic.
Well, that's what they're building
but
towards,
against,
right?
I assume
Brock
so.
Is like on the lower rung, right?
I assume so. But like Brock, yeah, exactly. Like Brock
then
is
probably Dustin, and then I guess Cody. There's only like 4 people, right?
Yeah, something like that. But like, well, it depends on how many students they bring out. But only 4 that like we know who they are. But like yeah, nobody knows who Brock is. He's a sacrificial lamb. He's there to get squashed, and he did. And to have Arn get out there and be sad about it, and which I really liked, and to set up for Lee, who is a lot more experienced in the ring, and is going to get beaten.
To get his face kicked in. We also know that's going to happen.
He's going to get beaten. He's not going to get squashed. They're going to have a competitive match, and it's going to be there to make Lee look good. He's going to take Malachi, who's very popular, and take him to his limits, and it's there just like Lee versus Miro. It's there to make Lee look good because they want to eventually get Lee to a Brian Pillman level of over or something like that. And I think they probably will. You know, he needs some more mic time, but yeah.
Yeah, and also getting saddled with the Becker family, I don't think really helped him all that much.
Well, he doesn't have a gimmick of his own that you can really grab onto. Like people
know
they
don't
Brian Pillman is.
So I mean, I don't even know.
Nobody knows who he is. He goes out there and he has like some good matches that you can.
He's like Will Utah. Like okay, like I see you, but you know, and he's seeming like a nice guy. Like you don't seem like a dick. You know, it's not like QT Marshall, where it's like you just look at him and you're like, ew, gross.
But maybe you don't need to. Like Darby Allin used to never talk, and he got over. So maybe who knows?
That's true.
Yeah. So who knows? It's like the fickleness of actually a gimmick that works. And nobody.
I love Darby's new intro video too, the animated one where it looks like almost like a video game. Like what was that? Paperboy. It almost looked like Paperboy.
Like you're a skater guy. Yeah.
But
then it was all this was made up for by the intro for Rampage this week, which was Lucha Brothers versus Jurassic Park. In the finals of the tag team eliminator. And this Jurassic Express. I always say Jurassic Park, Jurassic Express.
Wrestling
imitates art. That's right. Wrestling finds a way. That's what should be their title. But this was probably the best tag team match I've seen this year.
Even though I knew Lucha Brothers was going to win, but this is one of those things, just like we talked about earlier, where like, wow, I was like, Jurassic Express might actually pull this off. Like, and then there are lots of good near falls, lots of awesome spots, lots of destroyers, aprons, and shit. So,
they're giving Luchasaurus tons of stuff to do. He's blocking Lucha Brothers moves and doing dual choke slams. They're letting him look great.
The best Jurassic Express matches I've seen. Lucha Brothers, like they put this quality match on all the time, but Jurassic Express. Also, Jurassic Express doesn't fight that many good people, to tell you the truth. So I think they're also
it's a mixture of what's on the card. But I will say, like this coming on the heels of the Houston match against the Young Bucks, which was also one of the best Jurassic Express matches in a long time. It's really showing how well they have developed. And they are at the point now where they, especially with Jungle Boy, they look like a top tier tag team.
Well, they've been doing such a good job with this character, even to the point where I kind of was missing Luchasaurus after a while. So I was like, what happened to him?
But now they're back together
again. Lucha Brothers should, I think, take the titles from Young Bucks this time.
Yeah,
but I could definitely see, like, it's more feasible now for me to think of Jurassic Express being those people now too.
Yeah, you can imagine that if Jurassic Express had the belts, that they could carry them for a year and have top level main event tag team matches with any group in the company. That, it was probably not true a year ago, but it seems like
because Luchasaurus has always been over. That's just and he's always been over. I mean, even as a character, you see him, he's always been over. Jungle Boy is the one they had to work on getting over, and they got him to fuck over.
Yeah.
So
they're over as a team, and their in-ring has increased a lot to the point where they can put on really great. I mean, obviously they put on their best matches when they're with their best other teams, when they're with like the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers, and they're going to have their best matches. But I feel confident saying they would probably have great matches with Varsity Blondes and the Acclaimed and FTR and any of the other top tier tag teams. They would be able to do that for a year, and that's the point where you got to be at when somebody says, all right, let's start thinking about putting the title on them. And they'd put tag team matches you'd want to see.
Extremely over in Houston. I mean, I knew they'd be over, but they were probably the most over tag team in the house.
Maybe. I don't know if they were more over than Jurassic Express. People go crazy when the Jungle
songs I would say probably. Yeah.
But they were crazy over. People go crazy for
the Ciro Miedo thing. I mean, that thing's like super over.
Yep. Yep.
To the point that they had to put Pac with them to get him over, kind of. For something. So,
and we're gonna have some of that spill over. But lots of good stuff happening in the world of AEW this week, and we'll start a new round of Dark and Elevation tomorrow. And Dark is getting ready to switch to being a studio show. So it's taking the old Impact place. They're going to be filming it live at Universal Studios Orlando for free admission. So anyone who's in the park who just wants to, so it'll have an audience. But
it's like an Impact Zone or something.
It's like where the Impact Zone used to be, but
where they did Nickelodeon Studios or shit, or whatever.
So where that used to be, but obviously remade into Dark, and it's not like but it's for their YouTube show. It's not for their actual TV show.
AEW relationship. It's like we're also using each other's buildings now. I guess.
Well, Impact now is in Nashville, but that's just the difference being they're doing what you should do with it, where it's being used for their YouTube show, not for their prime television show. Which is very different. but yeah, so anybody who's at like Universal Studios when they film it, it's like free to the public. So anyone who's there can just go in. So you'll have some weird mixture of crowds coming in for
Well,
these things.
that's like the old Impact shows. I was like, so basically, like 75% of this crowd is just tourists. Like that's
yes, that's what it's going to be like. And that's what like basically like their developmental guys will be doing their first TV time in front of
So
like
you're not going to see.
tourists.
Are you going to see a lot of like storyline connection between Dark and Elevation or anything anymore? Is it going to be?
I expect that you
because you're not going to have people touring.
Right. I expect that you will, but how they will do it, I'm sure that they have a plan for how they will do it, but exactly what it's going to look like, we won't see until they start doing it. But I think you will, because I think that the dark tapings will be different days than the TV shows. So you will have people who are on Elevation would still be able to fly to Orlando and do dark tapings. But exactly how they're going to do it, it remains. They will probably, if I was them, I would probably do multiple dark tapings per day. So you tape like a month's worth of darks on one day. And so you can bring in a bunch of your guys who are going to be touring that month for that one Thursday, and they can get a bunch of stuff in the can so they can be on dark and still go to the traveling show.
Yeah, so logistically, it just makes a lot more sense to me to have one be a studio show, because that's just a lot of people you're putting on the road at one time for and I hope it gets to a more consistent, like, because we've seen them use all types of time allocation for like dark and elevation. It's like one time it's like dark is 2 hours and elevation 30 hours, or sometimes it's the opposite. This week it was both an hour, like So I hope they get to some type of like, because it also makes our job a little easier to not our job. We get paid for this, but like, for what we do for our hobby. A little easier when we know, okay, here's an hour show, that type of thing. Instead of like, oh wow, like a 5 hour dark and a 15-minute elevation this week. It's a little like, I'm looking forward to more consistency, which I think will happen once they get to the studio show.
Yeah, you would expect dark to just be like one solid hour once it's a studio show. Elevation, I actually kind of would as well, as long because they're recording Dynamite and Rampage on the same day, so that only gives you like an extra hour for elevation. But then, you have some of those weeks where Rampage will be live. You may get like a 2 hour elevation or an hour and a half elevation or something like that. But the rest of the time, yeah, maybe on an hour and an hour, which is good. It's one of the things I like best about Rampage. You're in and out. Like in 1 hour, that show is tight and super entertaining, and you never feel like you're there for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. But especially like even like the CM Punk show, like it was basically half an hour being the CM Punk show, the first dance. I mean, it was basically the CM Punk show. But even the first half hour was just a him. And that was also a good strategy to have him be on Rampage instead of Dynamite, because it gets more people tuning into, because man, like from what I can see on the internet, there are a ton of people who had not watched AEW at all and tuned in when they saw that Punk was going to be on the show.
Yep.
And so
that's back to
exactly what and everything with this move, because they wanted to get that crowd in, which I think they did.
And now they're back to Chicago after Milwaukee. So this week will be all Chicago. They'll be doing Dynamite from Chicago at the Now Arena on Wednesday, then a live Rampage from the Now Arena Friday, and then All Out will be Saturday night. Man.
For a lot of reasons, lucky in Chicago this week. They get a whole shitload last 2 weeks, right? A whole shit of very memorable wrestling and everything like that.
So that means by the time we record our next episode, it will be the post All Out episode. So
I do have to ask you this real quick though, because there have been rumors. We talked about the Arthur Ashe show. We talked about.
Well, you know what?
Daniel Bryan.
We forgot to mention this during. CM Punk came out and did a. A promo on Dynamite in Milwaukee. He came out to do some more just to keep pushing the Darby Allin match, and if you notice,
yes. And they say, hey, do you want to see me fight Darby Allin? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, hey, that's somebody else's stick, but y'all are just gonna have to be a little bit more patient.
I think that set people on fire.
What I heard previously was that the Arthur Ashe show was going to be his debut.
That's what I've heard.
I'm hearing right now there's a strong push that he could actually be on All Out.
So what the rumor that's going around, and no one knows. So it's important to say that nobody knows anything. They're just rumors, but some of them have even been reported in the Wrestling Observer, is that because there are increased COVID fears about New York, because we are basically a month away from the Arthur Ashe show.
It's an outdoor.
And it is an outdoor or open to the elements, but because they which is supposed to be like a 19,000 attendance, like a giant attendance record. But there are some concerns that just in case something happens with COVID that causes
like New
them
York shut
to
down or something.
postpone the Arthur Ashe show, or if New York shuts down or there's a lockdown, or they can only put half of the people in the building in order to social distance or something, that maybe they should do Daniel Bryan now for All Out. There is no reporting. No one has said anything like this. So I would say people shouldn't start
I'm not
expecting it. Well, it's just like with the Christian Cage thing. People start to expect something no one has said. And when it doesn't happen, they get all upset that the thing no one told them to expect didn't happen. So I think a lot of people start expecting Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson at All Out, and it doesn't happen. People will get upset unnecessarily, which would not be cool. I still think.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like,
well, that's something I want to go. I want to go down that card in just a second, but because All Out's coming. But I still think Bryan Danielson at. It's got to take me. I got to work hard to say it that way from now on.
I know, right?
I'm out of practice, but I still expect him for Arthur Ashe. But I guess we will just see. I won't be surprised if they do it early, but I think
it's gonna be in the back of your head all night. You know that, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It'll be. Is this here? Is it here?
Like, oh shit, is he there? Is that?
Yeah. But I expect it for, and apparently there's another one that they're working on after that. So expect some more signings. So with that said, and in that vein,
with the Dark thing and Bray Wyatt, maybe is that what you're talking about?
Maybe, although recent reporting is suggesting he may be headed towards Impact, not AEW. And nobody really, that's what the current reporting is. I mean, nobody knows.
Thing these days, but still.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Star power that they could use.
They will he'll be a bigger star there, and he'll get to do more of the goofy stuff there. So it would probably be, so they've been saying both Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt for Impact. That would be weird, but not impossible.
Yeah. That'd be a big gap. I'm assuming this happens with like Tony's permission or some crap like that, because Tony could just buy them up, right?
Well, I don't think he'd do their permission, but he would probably have the option to outbid if that's
with the understanding that he has access to that, basically.
Well, I don't even know. Probably not that. I mean, they are still separate companies, but I think more along the lines of like, if they're going to Impact, it's more likely because Tony has passed and AEW has decided that they don't want to do that.
Oh, okay.
I think that seems more likely, but
I just kind of think that's where the Dark Order storyline is heading to. Like you mentioned it earlier, there's two options what they do. Yeah. Because there's a guy that comes in and unites them. I'm kind of hoping it is Bray, because I think it kind of ties.
I don't think they're going to do that though. I think they're going to hold that off for the return of Hangman, and it's the return of Hangman that reunites them, because at some point, not in the not too distant future, at some point this fall, Hangman, at some point not far after All Out, Hangman's baby will have been born and Hangman will be back, and we're going to jump right back. I expect right now Hangman versus King Omega for Full Gear.
So you think this Dark Order thing is basically going to tread water until Hangman comes back?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. That's my guess. So with that said, the last thing we want to do is what we did for Double or Nothing is we're going to run down the All Out card and do our predictions for what's going to happen. So there is no announcement, and this is say the card as it exists now. I won't be surprised if they add Matt Hardy and Orange Cassidy to it before we get to it. Although they have 8 matches,
or Malachi versus Lee or something.
Well, I think Malachi versus Lee is going to be TV this week. So I don't know if Malachi might not be on it this time, but he'll definitely be on Full Gear.
Yeah, I don't see how he could be on the pay-per-view. You're right, because until you even Dustin isn't really a pay-per-view match, but really until you get to Cody, that's the pay-per-view match.
No. There's a lot of like big matches they're having now ahead of time, like FTR versus Santana or Ortiz is going to be on TV because there's no room for it on the pay-per-view, which is fine. It'll be great too. And they're teasing that it may be the last FTR match because of the severe damage to Cash Wheeler. Yeah, I'm hoping that's not true, and they're just doing that to promote the match, but it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think
it would be very unfortunate if they end up retiring because of that.
Yeah, because
they got so many great matches.
The first time to happen in wrestling, so yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it does happen. So they don't. They
You have the
haven't
women's
announced.
buy-in match, right? The women's all
Well, they haven't announced a buy-in match yet, but because
yeah, they did. It was the women's rumble.
oh,
It's
did
in the
they move
buy-in.
that into the buy-in? Okay,
Yep.
so let's start with the women's casino battle, not Royal Rumble, the women's casino battle royale, which they announced like 6 months ago they were going to have for All Out, but now they've started to announce participants. They haven't announced all of them.
Yeah.
But we know that Nyla Rose, a lot of like big names are going to be in it. Nyla Rose, Thunder Rosa,
Thunder Rosa, I think deserves a win. Anybody out of all this?
Maybe, but I don't think it's going to be her. Because number one, they usually don't give it to the person that deserves it. They give it to a someone that they want to have in that position, and someone who's not going to win the title. I think they're going to. I think
like an up and comer.
An up and comer. I think they want to wait on Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker too, because that's going to be
like they're waiting on King Kenny.
So they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it right as soon as Britt got the title. They want her to have some other defenses before they get to that, because that's a big one. And so this will probably be someone else who does. It could be a Tay Conti. It could be a Big Swole. It could be someone who can pull off a good title match, but is not Thunder Rosa. I'm trying to think who else they've. So Red Velvet,
maybe. I mean,
well, she just had one, but she's got. So I don't think she'll win, but they have announced her for it, so she will be in it.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna right now, based on who's in it, I'm going to say Tay Conti, because I don't think it's going to be a heel. I think it's going to have to be a baby face.
Right.
So that may change if they announce a few others. It's not going to be obviously Chris Statlander, which we'll get to, is wrestling Britt on the pay-per-view, so it's not going to be her. But there are a few other options here and there. Diamante, but I don't think it's good. I don't know. Actually, a Diamante Britt Baker match could be good, but I don't think it's going to be her.
Character-wise, she's great. Yeah.
So right now, I'm going to say Tay Conti is a good first choice. The other big thing is the question of who is going to be the Joker. This is the one that you never know who it's going to be. So the Joker for the men's casino battle royal this past year was Leo Rush, who was supposed to sign with the company and then didn't because he got hurt. So who knows if we'll ever see him.
Didn't he retire from wrestling, right?
He retired from wrestling. He's come back to finish all the dates that he agreed to with New Japan before announcing his retirement, and no one knows. And so he's doing that on New Japan Strong, and no one knows whether he will then permanently retire or change his mind. He could change his mind and just stay with New Japan Strong, or he could try to come back to AEW.
He's 7 or something.
He's very young, but he has had shoulder issues, so who knows. So the front running name right now for the Joker is Ruby Riott from WWE.
Oh, right. Formerly from NXT.
Yeah, so going by the name Ruby Soho. So that's a good it's a
unknown.
good possibility. I'm trying to there are some other women wrestlers who've been let go, but I don't know, the other like big name ones that people would know, like Mercedes Martinez is still out there, but she's been a Joker before and she's still rehabbing an injury.
What about Melina?
Well, Merlina's over on NWA, so I don't think Merlina's.
Oh, okay. I thought she was Impact.
No. It would be really interesting if it was Deonna Purrazzo. That would be interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
But Britt Baker can't lose. And I don't think Impact wants Deonna Purrazzo to lose because they've been pushing her hard. So as long as she's champ, I don't think she's losing. But that would be a very interesting match and probably a very good one. You could have one, or if they want to really go a long way, both Iconics. Nobody's mentioned that, but obviously Peyton
getting longer and longer. So
yeah. Well, one of them, and Peyton, what's her name, is married to Sean Spears. Some people have expected that she might show up, so there's an option for that. Could do
just like I'm expecting Lana to show up any minute now.
Well, and so like the next one, it could be Lana because they keep talking about Lana all the time.
I kind of wonder show because I'm like, there's got to be a reason he talks about you all the fucking time on TV. Like his weird references to his wife. It's kind of funny, but it's like I hope the payoff is that Lana shows up at some point. Otherwise,
well, it seems like it has to be. Right? That has to be the payoff.
Otherwise, it's really creepy. And on the way that character's supposed to be. It's like,
it could be Camille if they wanted to strengthen those NWA. AEW tie-ins that could be interesting. She's been on usually the Joker is someone we've never.
Wait, is she not the champion?
She is the champion. She's the NWA champion. She's getting ready to defend it tomorrow against Chelsea Green. So we'll see who won the Empower Battle Royal. It could be Chelsea Green.
That's Matt Cardona's girlfriend.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's how she did the picture with the title belts.
Yes.
That was good.
Yeah.
Good.
She's good at that sort of thing. It could be Chelsea Green. Chelsea Green could be an interesting one. She's bouncing around lots of promotions. She's technically signed with Impact, but she's bouncing around lots of different promotions right now. I'm trying to think who else is out there. I was gonna say Camille. I think is interesting, but usually they don't have it be someone you've ever seen in AEW, and she's been on an episode promoting her NWA match, so I don't think they would double up on that, especially because she's working two match because she's wrestling tonight again on the NWA 73 show, 73rd anniversary show. So I don't know if they want to have her come back and then have to do another pay-per-view. I mean, she's doing two pay-per-views this weekend. That's a lot. That's like two 25-minute matches back to back. But I think Ruby Riot's probably a pretty good guess. You know, they may swerve us a little bit, but I think that's a pretty good guess. Unfortunately, they've had lots of bad luck with the Jokers. Like the only Hangman was the original Joker in the original men's battle royale.
Brian Cage was,
but since then, Brian Cage has been one. But it's also been Matt Sydal, who had the unfortunate botch when he showed up, and that hasn't helped. And then it was Leo Rush, who then got hurt and retired. And it was Mercedes Martinez, who left the company and went to NXT and got hurt and let go. So I don't know if you want someone.
It's almost like the Madden cover curse.
It almost is. It's the Joker. It's like, I don't want to be the Joker. No, let someone else be the Joker.
Yeah, I'll be like 10 Eclipse. How about that? That's good. I'm not sure how neat this works, but yeah.
I don't have the card order in front of me, so I'm just going to go down it by memory to see.
Sure.
I know all the matches. I just don't know I don't think they've actually listed the full order. But
there's some like Miro Eddie. I don't think is announced for it, for example. But I think it's going to be.
I think they have said it's going to be. I think they actually have technically announced it. So, but let's go from. Let's go Miro Eddie. Yeah, it has to be Miro. There's no way it's going to be Eddie. I still think they're saving Miro for Jungle Boy. I think that's going to be Jungle Boy's big title win. Now that it's clear that they're not going to beat the Young Bucks, I think it's
not Fuego del Sol for getting revenge for his mask. Which I'm like, well, AEW is going to the mask well a little much lately with the whole like using that as a tactic.
They like using they mix a lot of lucha with a lot of Japan strong style with a lot of Mid-South wrestling. That's what they do. They're the fusion show. Right. Yes, they are. But it worked. Even though he's from Mobile, but it worked for me. Yeah, it's gonna be
Orange Cassidy. We said is not
They haven't announced a match. Yeah. We'll see this week.
One of the most over guys in the company is going to
happen. We'll see this week if they announce it or not. I expect they will, but they haven't said. Britt Baker versus Chris Statlander. I think it's going to have to be Britt Baker. They're not going to change that this quick. And Chris Statlander.
I think that'd be like a fun, goofy match. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like
that might be that might be all the Orange Cassidy we get. That might be best because you can expect best friends out there to support her. That might be it. I don't know.
That could be.
Try to give.
Although you would think with all the work that the Hardy Family Office and wrestlers are doing against each other, it's got to be some pay-per-view chaos.
You would think so.
Like wrestling each other for like weeks now. It seems like.
Yeah, if not months. Yeah, a lot. They've been wrestling each other a lot.
Mox versus Kojima, right? That's another one. Is that old dude that fought him like before?
No, but he's like that. He's a contemporary of that guy, Yuji Nagata. So he was actually a former NJPW and All Japan champion. He was MLW's initial champion. He's been around for a long time. The rumor is that they wanted Tanahashi, and it was going to be Tanahashi right up until it wasn't. And so they're getting Kojima instead, and the Tanahashi match is being kicked down the road. And there might be several New Japan matches, which is good. That means that it shows the two sides still working together. But yeah, and that should be fun and a nice little thing for anybody who's watched a lot of New Japan and knows who Kojima is. The downside is Kojima's recently been here on Impact, where he was wrestling a lot of Impact. So people who've been watching a lot of Forbidden Door stuff have seen him do a lot of that stuff with American wrestlers. But it's fine. And Moxley will most certainly win that match, and that'll be the start of some more and more New Japan stuff going on. It's just bad time.
Yeah, because on that note, when you talk about the Japan stuff, another rumor I heard about Bryan Danielson was that he actually wanted to work a lot with Japanese wrestlers, and so that was one of the that he wanted to go to AEW. So I guess this thing isn't going away anytime soon. Like we're going to be very tied to NJPW for.
Well, apparently they were saying when he was leaving WWE, like the two things that he really wanted to do, which he hasn't had a chance to do or hasn't done in a while, is he wanted to wrestle in New Japan and do a lot of matches in New Japan, which WWE doesn't want to do, and he wanted to work the anniversary show for CMLL once, which WWE wasn't going to let him do, and. And now, so he has some freedom to do that, to work out those sorts of things. And even though there's no like big relationship between AEW and CMLL, and won't be because they work with AAA, and those guys are.
There's no closed door either.
Well, probably not as long as they're working with AAA. Like CMLL is a weird company, and they see AAA as their mortal enemies, and they won't work with anyone who's working.
Oh, one of those like blood feud type things.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the point where they will not hire a wrestler who's worked for AAA. It's like if you work for AAA, you are dead to us. Okay. It is very stupid. It's just there's a lot of things they do to shoot themselves in the foot. It's just a lot of politics stuff.
You're just naturally just cutting your nuts off by doing that. It's like, okay, so I just want half the talent available to me. Great. Yes, like that's a really dumb way.
Well, in a lot of ways, they act like WWE, where they're like the people who are with us are the only ones who matter. Anyone who doesn't work for us doesn't matter. And yeah, it's a really silly way of looking at things that hurts them more than it helps them. But yeah.
Well, speaking of AAA CMLL, we're going to see the two matches that tie in with each other, which I don't know if they could go either way. You got Andrade versus Pac.
Yep.
I don't know which way that's.
I think it's going to have to be Andrade. Have to go over, like I think it has to be. You can't beat Andrade.
But I'm still thinking it's not clean. I don't think it goes over clean over Pac.
No, I think there has to be some shenanigans.
Right. And which might tie into the Lucha Brothers Young Bucks.
So the question is, and now that's the one where I don't know. Like you figure when AEW does a steel cage match, they do it so there is no shenanigans. They do it the way it's intended, that there's no shenanigans and it's just a match.
Yeah, because actually got tired, and then even every time it's like, oh, well, like that. So it's not something new. So I'm like, okay, like this match doesn't matter anymore. It's just
like the joke about WWE cage matches is they're there to keep any shenanigans from happening. So you just assume that shenanigans will of course happen, and everyone. Whereas this is only the second cage match that AEW's ever done.
Right, because it was the Pinnacle versus Inner Circle. That was the other.
Straight up cage. I mean, that was a War Games match, sort of. Straight up cage match was Wardlow and Cody, and that's like been the only.
Oh, that's right.
Cody and MJF did come out and open the door, but he never went in, and there was ultimately no interference. And also, they use original cage match rules. Escaping the cage doesn't give you the victory. You have to beat your opponent. The idea is that you have to beat them inside the cage, and no one can come in. And so one of the other things that I don't think I thought about, but Tony Khan was mentioning recently, is that this will be the first match between the Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks in 2 years. They have not been they've been in the ring in like 6-mans and 8-mans, but they have not just a straight up tag match since All Out of 2019, and when they did the Ladder of Death match.
I mean, I'm pretty sure
which was great. Well, this is probably yes. I can't imagine.
No offense to CM Punk and Darby Allin, which I'm pretty sure is going to be the most anticipated match, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be the best match.
But this will probably end up being. I'm sure that CM Punk and Darby Allin will try really hard to be the best match, and I'm sure that Kenny Omega and Christian Cage will try really hard to be the best match. But this one's the one where it's going to be unless you're someone who just hates crazy spot fest, because this is what this is going to be. It's going to be an insane spot fest.
Oh, I guess if you just hate life, like that's fine. Whatever.
It'll be really hard.
It's got a good storyline. They did a tournament going up to them. We're all ready to see Young Bucks lose by now. Yeah. Lucha Brothers have been, the momentum's really behind them right now. Yeah. It's just I just think it's going to be the best match on the card. I don't think it's going to be an event though. Do you think the main event's going to be the title match, or do you think it's going to be CM Punk Darby Allin?
I think normally I would say I think it's going to be the title match, because Tony Khan has been on record as saying that he likes to have his world championship match be his main event. The only thing I think that could change that is two things. I know the Young Bucks have said many, many times that they really, really want to see a tag team match main event a pay-per-view. And they've been sort of at odds with Tony Khan again about that.
I mean, given this is a cage match,
the other one is that, and the fact that it's in a physical cage, which you have to bring down and put up, which you would want to set up last, so that you have time to set it up, and you don't have to and you don't have to like get it out of there in a hurry to have all the other matches and mess up your flow. So like the physical limitations of the cage match makes me think they might do that as the main event.
I wonder if CM Punk Darby's going to open the thing.
It might. My feeling is that that one will probably end up being in the middle, but okay. Or it could co-main, but I don't think it will, because I think it'll probably end up being somewhere towards the end, in like the last half, followed by Kenny and Christian, and then the tag match to wrap it up, the cage match to wrap it up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a good card. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's like so there's a couple of things where we know what the results are going to be. Yeah. But the ones that we don't know what the results are, those are very, very exciting.
Don't know. This is like at least the second one of these in a row where I don't know if it's 50-50 whether the Young Bucks retain or not, which
and I'm very interested what happens with Pac and Andrade after. Like what happens to them? Like go Loser Brothers. Like that storyline's very good to me so far.
I am fairly certain that Andrade is going over, but not 100%, just fairly certain. And I'm still excited to see that match. Do you think Ric Flair comes out?
Yeah, Ric Flair show up. Yeah, but then if Lucha Brothers win, then does that mean that if Andrade wins, what does that mean? Do they say?
Does that mean Lucha Brothers lose? If Pac loses, do Lucha Brothers win?
Like storylines, it's like one of those things that could logically branch out into like different directions.
Yeah. So. CM Punk versus Darby Allin. We're all pretty sure CM Punk's going to go. He has to. It makes no sense. Nothing else makes any sense.
Right.
And Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage, I think is going to be a very good match, but I think we're all certain that Kenny Omega is going to retain.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Britt Baker's going to go for Statlander. I think we said that. So
Statlander, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Well, one day she will probably.
That's a lot. That's a lot of women right now. Yeah. Don't be too hard. Unless you're Hikaru Shida, basically. Then it's a lot of women right now. So
I think what everybody thinks now. I mean, things can change. Everyone thinks now. It's going to be Britt Baker as champion for a while, and then it's going to be like Thunder Rosa as champion for a while, and then if they do their building right, it might be Jade Cargill as champion for a while.
Yeah,
something like that. And then
we're predicting. I guess the only title change that we're kind of predicting is maybe the tag team. Just like I feel like that's what we did the last time.
It is wrong. The last time we predicted we were predicting tag team and women's championship last time, and we were only right about one of those, and everyone knew that the women's championship was going to change. And this time, everyone except for the tag team, everyone's certain is going to retain, and they almost have to. So, but the only one we don't know is the tag team, which also makes me feel like this could be the one where it gives everybody like a big thing, a big moment that you see, and especially if it's the only one that makes sense that you change.
That's what I'm looking forward to it, because there is a beauty, like you said before, like even though the results of a match, to see how they get there is also nice to see, but it is a little bit more special when you don't know what the hell could happen.
That's the one where I think everyone's going to be excited because you don't.
That's what I'm saying. It might be the best match. I mean, that adds a certain element to it, of course.
Yeah. So is this a match of the year candidate? Could be.
It could be. I mean, a cage match. Even if you look at it on paper, even if I told you this even a year ago, like, hey, cage match pay-per-view for the title, Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers, you'd be like, damn. Mm-hmm. All right, then. You'd be like, that's a good match. And so, especially now that you've seen, especially Lucha Brothers have been wrestling on TV for, consistently on every show, it seems like, for at least for 3 weeks
ever since Ray Phoenix came back from injury. And as long as they can both stay healthy.
It's his own worst enemy, honestly. It's just like if he hadn't been injured all the damn time. Which I guess he's wrestling a safer style now. You don't see the crazy spots from him as much as you used to. But then
every so often. But
then I always wonder if he's going to do something something off a cage and then injure himself.
Yeah, it could be. Well, like at Triple Mania, they were doing like these giant dives to the outside, and if they had missed a single, anybody had missed a catch, it would have been crazy. But so
and they worked well together, and no one's going to botch anything up. So that's going to be really, really good to see.
What I really like is if they do win.
That one the most. Hopefully that's the title change. We'll see.
I think that's the one everyone. That and CM Punk are the two everyone's looking forward to. Yeah. So what we got, we have three. I mean, I'm looking forward to all of it. Some of them mainly, so I think they'll be fun. But it feels like the three that people are most looking forward to are Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers, CM Punk and Darby Allin, and Andrade and Pac.
That's definitely my three. That's my three.
Well, I'm looking forward to, even though it's like a foregone conclusion, I am looking forward to Kenny and Christian Cage, because I think.
So it's CM Punk, Darby Allin. That's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah. Well, I think that one's going to be very, very. I think that one people might be sleeping on how good it is going to be.
I think it's crazy that you never saw CM Punk back in the day. Like you never really watched back then. Like he was good, man. Like he was a Heyman guy and everything. Like
the invasion drove me away. I think like King of the Ring 2001 was like the last thing I ever watched.
Like you didn't even watch when the Piper happened. Like you had to read about it.
I read about it. I knew it happened and knew what was in it. I read about
Crazy.
it.
No, that's what I
wasn't watching.
That was a huge deal too.
No, just post WCW WWF drove me away, and I was like, I'm not.
The Lesnar Undertaker match is what drove me away from WWE. So that's what I was like. No, and I think CM Punk actually quit WWE like maybe not even a year after that.
Yeah. So Royal Rumble 2014, I think, was his last match. Happened. Yeah. No, it was heel Stone Cold Steve Austin. I was like, well, I don't want to see this. Well, it was a mixture of heel Stone Cold Steve Austin and then like no baby faces to oppose him. So the heels were crushing everyone. Not unlike modern WWE. So I was like, I don't want to see this. I have no desire to see this. So I just stopped watching it. And every so often I'd look in on it and I go, hey, there's nothing here that makes me. It really wasn't until Double or Nothing that I was like, all right, I'm gonna.
And here's another thing: I don't get about the WWE philosophy because, like, their attitude that they have right now, which worked for them in the '90s, but that's because they didn't have any competition back then. But now they're acting this way with the actual competition.
Well, they had no. It worked from the 2000, like the '90s is when they had their strongest competition. That's when they almost went out of business. But I mean, that's
when they went to this whole just pretty people who can't work thing, that was like I would say 2000s, not '90s.
Yeah, and it worked in the 2000s. Well, I mean. They got a lot of guys, they had like a good trading program for a while and they got a lot of good guys. And then they got a lot of okay guys and no one who was particularly over. But they had no competition. Like TNA was.
But even then, their sense of being over, it's like it's only over to Vince in his mind. Like you could be literally over with everybody else, but if Vince doesn't like it, and that's just
then it doesn't exist. Or if he didn't, or if it's not the one who wanted to get over,
it would be okay if Vince was like a normal person with normal sensibilities, but he's not. So that's a problem.
Yeah. So people had to fight to get over, and there were some periods where there were guys that I loved in the 90s who finally got to be top guys like Jeff Hardy and Edge, and I missed all of that. But I'd be willing to bet like their runs when they were the top guys weren't great, partly because the product wasn't great. And
Jeff Hardy, he was again like his own worst enemy
he was his own worst enemy.
Yeah. But Edge, he had a rated R superstar. That was a pretty long run.
That's what people say, and at some point I will see that. But I have no.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting you didn't see this shit.
See it. I know it happened, but I didn't see it.
Wasn't that great.
Well, I have been working my way through every single WWE pay-per-view. So at some point I will.
Right. Where are you right now on that?
I am in the middle of 1999.
Oh, you're in the good shit.
I'm in the really See, that's the thing. I'm in the really, really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't, Triple H just became the modern version of Triple H. He just left DX and joined the corporation and became like the corporate stooge Triple H. So it's like he's fully incarnated now. And Rock has left the corporation and become the people's champ again. So he's like the good Rock. And so you have all the really, really good stuff. I mean, there's some you still got fucking Val Venus and some stuff that I just dear God help me. I mean, that is awful. That is really awful. No. That stuff is awful.
Being libertarian Sean Morley, come on.
Yeah. Well, Kane, unfortunately, back then still doesn't talk. He hasn't gotten like the electric voice box thing yet. But I know like the 2000s are coming, and I'm not looking forward to it. But I'm gonna.
That's
I'm
the
gonna
thing.
watch
Like you're sitting at the top, and you're like, oh man, it kind of gets worse from here.
Well, yeah. Like I'm not looking like I missed all of Batista, but I never would have wanted like Batista stuff or the Authority stuff or like the long John Cena runs. Those aren't going to be my cup of tea.
Oh God, the John Cena run sucks so bad. It was fun when he was a rapper, but then when he came face and they kept him face just because Vince just wanted him to be a face the whole time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why, like, when he was a Marine, he was a rapper, and it's like, what is your gimmick now, other than it's to pander to women and children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It works.
Anyway, the show was about that, so we should probably stop.
We're turning into something else entirely. Or we'll start talking about the endless push of Roman.
We talk about it because we talk about how the contrast you're going to see creatively between AEW and WWE is going to be pretty sharp, I think.
And why they do what they do. Right. Even if it's like the most basic thing on earth, like let the babyface win in their hometown.
Yeah, and this is another thing. Like with these people at AEW that they're getting these WWE guys. I understand that there's a lot of people who are against it because they're like, well, AEW has their own guys to promote, right?
Yeah.
But you have to look at the level of people that WWE is bringing in. If you're bringing in Malachi Black, so you're bringing in CM Punk and Brian Danielson's. You mean these guys are you
take them. You take them when you can get them.
Exactly.
Especially like the Miros and the Malachi Blacks, who you can look at them and go like, I cannot believe you could not make a star out of these guys. Right. I can make a star, or Brody Lee, and go like, I can make a star out of these guys overnight, and then turn around and do it and go like, you should.
It's not just taking everybody who just work for WWE all the time. It just happens to be that WWE's let go some pretty good people lately. Because
they're morons. Maybe they're because they either let go of really good guys because they couldn't figure out how to get them over, or they didn't match whatever it is Vince wants, or they've made a situation where like their best guys like Bryan Danielson and CM Punk go like, it is not worth it for me to keep working here because this is not a fulfilling environment, and I'm going to go somewhere where it is, and where AEW is obvious to anyone who's like anyone other than like lived their entire life in the WWE system is going to look at it and go like, this is where I can go and do professional wrestling.
Right. And the thing that you're seeing from AEW, which is the reason like a lot of people like when they went to ECW back in the day, what I'm getting to is like, you got to keep your intellectual property. Like you were still you. You go to WWE, you don't become you anymore. You become their version of you. And so, usually
it's not even, and it's usually like some other character.
Advanced surgery, that type of bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Hulk Hogan was Hulk Hogan wherever he went, but now it's like you leave and you got to become Brody Lee or John.
Yeah, like Jericho's one of the few last ones that's still around that actually got to be Jericho or the hell he went.
Because he came in as Jericho and he got to own all of his stuff.
Yeah, because he'd been wrestling forever, even between.
Well, CM Punk kept all his stuff when he came in, and he's
the latest example. He got to keep.
He's probably the last one
for WWE, and he got to be CM Punk after WWE. So that's probably the last example of that.
There's a handful. Depends on what happens with them. You have like the handful of guys who came in as themselves for one reason or another, and didn't get. At least their names didn't get changed. WWE always tries to change everything. So obviously, the big thing that's on a lot of people's radar right now is going to be what happens with Adam Cole. Is he going to?
That's another name.
Because Adam Cole came in. Adam Cole came in. Is Adam Cole? He's always been Adam Cole. He came in. He stayed Adam Cole. And when he leaves, he'll still be Adam Cole. Yeah, Adam Cole's his real name. So he was Adam Cole in ROH. He was Adam Cole. He stayed Adam Cole when he came to NXT. Keith Lee the same way, because Keith Lee's real name.
That's right. Keith Lee was always Keith Lee in the Indies.
So if he ever leaves, he'll still be Keith Lee. So if Adam Cole does indeed come to AEW, like a lot of people are speculating, he'll still be Adam Cole. They're gonna have to find some way to raise him from.
AEW's not gonna make you change. That's for one thing.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, he'll get to bring his name with him and still be. Well, Chelsea Green is still Chelsea Green. She had to fight with.
Of course, from a marketing.
That's her real name.
Sense, right? Like, why would you build up your work? Like, why reinvent the wheel? If you're already kind of over with the existing brand, let's just work together on that.
The only thing is, if Adam Cole is going to come to AEW, they're going to have to find some way to raise the dead. But I'm sure they're going to have to do that.
I mean, that's another name. See, it's getting there's a lot of names on the horizon for AEW right now, and we'll see. Even if some of them.
Do you know that whole story about
what?
That the Young Bucks the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega murdered Adam Cole. They poisoned him and killed him. And
is that
yes, and if he leaves WWE, they have to bring him back to life.
Oh well, I mean, we've Undertaker, so
that's true.
Concept.
That's true.
You get buried alive and you come back up every once in a while. That's just what happens.
That's right.
That's what I figured.
But they do it. Like Chelsea Green was Chelsea Green in NXT, and she had to apparently fight with them, but she got to still be Chelsea Green.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just fight enough and they give you good enough reason. I think their default mode is they'll just make their own shit for you. But I think if you really have a good case for keeping your own property, they'll let you keep it. I don't know.
They should.
But then
a lot of other guys, they just make them change, and then it's whatever, and then you got to turn it back to something else and build your brand back up. But that's okay. Yeah. John Moxley's probably stronger being John Moxley than trying to still be Dean Ambrose. So, it probably works in the long run.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's not like John Moxley's real name is John Moxley, so there you go.
No, it's John Good, I think is his real name.
Yeah, so. Not Moxley, not even John Goodley.
Apparently Moxley was like a takeoff from Varsity Blues, the old movie.
Really?
Because
I
his
don't watch.
original
I
his original gimmick was a football player. And like his first
don't-
at like the first
or like Raleigh.
yeah, no, very much like that. It was like when he was back with CZW or something like that. And
Which is
so,
funny because he was smaller then. Like he'd be more believable as a football guy now. I mean, it's a bigger frame and everything now.
Yeah.
Anyways,
we're getting off topic, and this
Yeah.
is a long one.
We
Yeah,
got
a
off
bunch of
topic a while
shows.
ago,
This has been one of our longer ones. So,
Yeah.
but that's all right. And it's the next one will be longer still because we'll have to go through all week of Rampage and Dynamite, and then All Out.
Yeah.
So there's going to be lots of stuff to talk about.
Although I suspect there's not going to be too many things that move. I was going to say move a needle again. There's two things that really happen of substance on.
Oh, we almost forgot. I don't think it's been announced, but almost certainly Brian Cage versus Ricky Starks will be on All Out.
That's true. Yeah, right.
Is it Brian Cage or is it Is it Brian Cage or is it Ricky Starks?
Brian Cage versus Hobbs is on Dynamite, and then after Dynamite, they're probably going to set that up, like, and hastily set up something for that.
Yeah. So who goes over, Brian Cage or Ricky Starks?
I mean, you have to think Ricky Starks, right?
You would have to think so. He's the person who's getting pushed harder.
Otherwise,
up the card.
unless you have them go back and forth for fucking ever.
But if Brian Cage,
I don't have a finger on the program yet.
But if Starks wins the blow-off match, then where does Brian Cage go from there?
Is this a blow-off match though? That's what I'm
if
saying.
It's on a pay-per-view, it has to be. If it's a pay-per-view match, it has to be.
I mean, yeah, I guess by that, because then I guess Cage would have to go over. I don't know. I'm really not invested as that one as I'd like to be. Even though I like all of everybody involved in it, but like emotionally, I'm kind of like,
It's just there's so much going on.
Also, it doesn't help that I don't really respect the FTW belt or anything like that. I'm like, okay, you just bring your own belt and you're supposed to treat it like a big deal. That creatively doesn't make too much sense at all.
I can go with it, but there.
That's just like you going to work and bringing your own nameplate. Like, no, I'm this. I'm the manager. It's like, no, you can't just bring shit from home and say you're the manager. It's like, no, have you seen FTW?
Well, to be fair, the FTW belt does have some cachet value. It's not just a thing that was made up here and now. It goes.
Yeah, but the cachet value. You didn't even watch ECW, and you're a wrestling fan. So,
well, I watched ECW. I mean, I was watching wrestling when ECW was around. That wasn't something that happened.
I thought you didn't watch ECW.
I've watched here and there a bit.
Yeah,
I didn't watch
but
it
that's
regularly.
If you're a hardcore
fan, I knew who Taz was.
Term recognition, then how is it a big deal like these days?
Well, I think a lot of people who are fans of AEW are people who probably.
I think just weird people were just bringing their own belts and like, hey, look, this is not. It's like unsanctioned, but here you go. This is a big deal. Let's call each other champion. But anyways, we'll get to see that match, and then we'll see what the result of that is. I just wish I had more emotional investment in it, but I guess Cage would have. If this is a blow-off match, then Cage would have to go over. Otherwise, this is all for nothing.
Yeah, or otherwise it's all for nothing. But we'll see.
Because the Starks is. Well, is this an FT? Would it be an FTW title match?
I don't think so. I think it's just a revenge match.
Okay.
So I don't know. But it seems like it has to be the end, and then they got to find something else for Ricky to do.
Because it's going on a while. If anything, I'd actually like to see Cage and Hobbs feud a little longer, more than Cage and Starks. I think that could have potential to be a decent match. So.
I'd like to see Team Taz go do something else. We've been through the Team Taz.
Me too. Drama. Yeah,
it's time for something else.
More than anything, have Cage do something else. Have Team Taz go do something else.
Yep.
Have go do something else.
Yep.
Maybe get Hook to actually do stuff. He's doing more and more stuff each episode. It seems like
he's over.
Justin Bieber. Oh yeah, so we should say that story. So real quick, when we were at the show in Houston, he brought out Hook with Taz. Taz brought out Hook, and then the fans started chanting Justin Bieber at Hook, which I was like, I had to figure out what the hell they were chanting. When I figured it out, I was like, oh, that's funny. Taz gets so pissed off, he starts getting on the mic and like yelling at us about no, he's not like Justin Bieber, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, damn, you took that shit seriously? Like that's
apparently that bled over in because they were doing
so mad about it.
Well, they were doing a backstage segment at that point. Apparently, some of what he was saying came onto the show as well. So yeah, he was getting hot about the Justin Bieber
I know.
stuff.
I was like, I really triggered a nerve there with the whole Justin Bieber.
That was great. Hey, that's professional wrestling. And, and this has been All Elite Reviewing. We've got a long, hard week of more All Elite Wrestling coming ahead of us, and a lot to talk about next Sunday. So. I think it's time for us to sign off and then get into our next batch. Got to rebuild and re-strengthen for a full weekend of All Elite Wrestling coming up. So
right,
until
for one of
then,
the more anticipated pay-per-views in a little bit. So
yeah, this is gonna be a big one. This will
right.
be a CM Punk's first match back. This is going to
Yeah,
be, everyone's
definitely
expecting
a
this to
big
be the
deal.
most watched AEW pay-per-view yet. So
I would not be surprised if it ends up being that.
See, maybe they'll break 200,000. I think that would be big for them.
I just like them to at least like challenge WWE numbers for WWE actually thinks they have competition and can actually make better creative decisions.
That's
I
a
know.
long way up. You got to start getting to like 500,000 buys or something like that before that they start to even remotely. I mean, and even then they won't be thinking about that. They'll be thinking when they start to see like demo ratings really starting to compete with each other. But
right, yeah.
But we'll see. Who knows? They're not.
Yeah,
they're not
we'll see. Right, so yeah, we will definitely have a lot to talk about next week. That's for sure.
Yeah. But AEW's hot right now, and this is the week that they're going to be.
It has never been hotter.
Never been hotter. Yeah, so this will be an interesting pay-per-view, and it's going to set the course for the rest of this year for All Elite Wrestling. And
until Daniel Bryan shows up, or Bryan Danielson, we'll see another course change. But yeah, which could be this Sunday. We don't know.
Could be. Don't know. Don't what's going to happen.
Don't be surprised.
But don't be surprised.
Yeah, when all the yes chants start building for crescendo, and he comes out at the climax.
And we will be here for it. So until then, yes, we will. And until then, I'm Joshua Starnes,
and I'm Shamik Ghosh,
and this has been All Elite Wrestling, or All Elite Reviewing. Cue the music.